Chapter 1102. Under the escort of Feng Yuro and Imo Qinggu, Chu Yang finally returned to the Orchard Palace. All the brothers and Wu Qianqian surrounded him worriedly. They were all furious about Chu Yang's injury. Zi Sheqing chased everyone out, including Imo Qinggu and Feng Yuro. Only Chu Yang and herself were left in the room. "Stop pretending. My palm only made you tumble. You're fine." Zi Sheqing pouted and said to a certain someone. Chu Yang grinned. He originally looked like he was dying, but he suddenly sat up in high spirits. "They didn't recognize you, did they?" Chu Yang asked. "How is that possible?" Zi Sheqing snorted and glared at him. "Do you think I'm as useless as you?" Chu Yang laughed dryly. "Hee, but your palm was quite ruthless. You made me naked on the spot and flipped me 7 or 8 times in the air, exposing my beautiful body in broad daylight. It's really too tragic. My innocence and reputation were destroyed by you just like that." Zi Sheqing rolled her eyes. She had nothing to say about this guy's shamelessness. "How is it? This poison?" Zi Sheqing looked at Chu Yang. "I'm fine." Chu Yang shrugged. "The poison has been neutralized. But I have to maintain this condition for the next few days." Zi Sheqing nodded understandingly. "They may be about to take action," Zi Sheqing said softly. "I knew it. It's impossible that you didn't realize it." Chu Yang was relieved. "What do you think?" "We can only fight." Zi Sheqing smiled faintly. "I purposely allowed you to reveal my abilities during the auction. I've been waiting for this day." Her beautiful eyes shot out a cold, murderous aura. "There are too many ignorant people in the world. There's a need to clean them up." Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "But we have to be careful. They are well aware of your strength. If they still want to fight under such circumstances, then they must have something to rely on. They must have enough confidence to deal with you." Zi Sheqing said disapprovingly, "Confidence to deal with me? With just them?" Chu Yang became serious. "Don't underestimate them." Zi Sheqing snorted. She didn't comment. "Once they attack, they will split into 2 groups. There's no way they'll surround us." Chu Yang said, "Because if we're all together, you guys can rush out with us whenever you want to leave. They won't be able to stop us if they insist on stopping us. That's why they want to deal with you. We must set up a specific environment." Chu Yang said softly, "That's what I'm most worried about. It wasn't their strength. They are definitely not as strong as you, but this environment makes me very worried." A trace of gentleness appeared in Zi Sheqing's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. He said, "If there is a specific environment, Chu Yang, you need to know one thing." "What is it?" Chu Yang asked. "A specific environment. Of course, it could temporarily trap me inside. However, they themselves will definitely be trapped inside with me. As long as one of them leaves, I can come out." Zi Sheqing said lightly, "Even if there's a specific environment with my cultivation, it's not something that a few supreme martial artists can stop. Moreover, there was still Bu Luqing and the Moon Breeze couple. Therefore, they would need to mobilize at least 200 supreme martial artists to have a chance of achieving the initial goal. If they wanted to be confident, they would need at least 1,000 supreme martial artists. Only then would they be able to cause me harm. Let me lose my life." Zi Sheqing smiled proudly and looked at Chu Yang lightly. "Do you think that there are so many supreme martial artists in the current heavens world? Not to mention just law enforcement officers and big clans?" Chu Yang frowned. "Not necessarily." Zi Sheqing smiled disdainfully. "If they want to make a move, they would definitely split into 2 groups. The first group would first think of a way to lure all of you out. Lead to a specific environment. The second group would then be able to attack us." Chu Yang said solemnly, "Therefore, if you decide to fight, then don't be distracted and fight with all your might. No matter what they say about us, don't believe them." Zi Sheqing nodded slowly. However, before they have the confidence to get rid of us, they won't deal with all of you. On this point, they should have the confidence. Otherwise," Chu Yang said, "after today's battle, both sides will completely fall out with each other and have no more scruples. In the future, there will be no shortcuts. We can only fight our way up step by step." Zi Sheqing nodded slowly. There was a meaningful look in her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. "However, I have something to ask of you. And it's something that you must be careful of," Chu Yang said seriously. Seeing that Chu Yang suddenly became serious, Zi Sheqing couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. She asked, "What is it?" "When the time comes, one person will appear. It's Wu Jueqing, the descendant of Qin Feng." Chu Yang said seriously, "Firstly, you have to be careful of his poison. This person was the ancestor of poison techniques tens of thousands of years ago. The poison techniques that Lur is practicing now started from him. I see. Zi Shiqing nodded. Secondly, no matter what weapon he uses, you have to be careful of his sword. Chu Yang said seriously, the sword intent of the Calamity Sword is on him. This is also what I'm most worried about. It's the only thing that can cause fatal harm to you. Zi Shiqing nodded heavily and said in a serious tone, I'll be careful. No matter how arrogant Zi Shiqing was, she didn't dare to look down on the Calamity Sword. Because this was the sword of the Emperor that even that deity had to respect and be afraid of. Zi Shiqing's heart was also uneasy about what kind of power it could unleash in its final form. Thirdly, it's what I want to ask of you. Chu Yang said seriously, that sword intent is very important to me. It's even more important to the Calamity Sword. If possible, snatch it. Zi Shiqing thought for a while and said, I can't guarantee that I'll succeed, but I'll try. Chu Yang sat up straight and said seriously, fourthly, if snatching the sword intent is dangerous, then don't do it. You have to promise me this. You also know that if anything happens to you because of this, I'm afraid that my life will be ruined by my inner demons. Chu Yang knew that Zi Shiqing would definitely try. He also hoped that Zi Shiqing would try. However, this was definitely not at the cost of Zi Shiqing's life. Therefore he used himself to threaten Zi Shiqing. He knew that Zi Shiqing cared a lot about him. Zi Shiqing smiled bitterly and said helplessly, since you've said so, I can't possibly ruin your life, right? She looked helpless, but a hint of sweetness flashed across her eyes. You're not allowed to get hurt. Chu Yang pressed on, his eyes shining. At least you can't get hurt because of the sword intent. All right. You're so wishy-washy. Zi Shiqing raised her hands in surrender. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. Also, I have something to give you. Chu Yang relaxed himself and said softly, something to give me? Zi Shiqing raised her eyebrows and asked curiously, what is it? Yes, heavy pills. Chu Yang took out a jade bottle made of purple crystal core and said, this is the heavy pills that I asked the sword spirit to make using the elixirs from the upper realm that you gave me. There's a total of 1. Take 1 and you can quickly recover from your injuries. If you go to the Heaven Imperial Court and take it with the help of the spiritual energy there, your cultivation will also improve by leaps and bounds. You made all the elixirs that I gave you into pills for me? You're giving them back to me? Zi Shiqing frowned and looked like she was about to fly into a rage. Only a small part of it. Chu Yang said seriously. That won't do. Zi Shiqing was flustered and exasperated. You can't always worry about me, do things for me and pave the way for me, but not let me do anything for you? Chu Yang laughed bitterly and looked at her seriously. Do you think that I'm so useless? So cowardly? So unworthy? Zi Shiqing gritted her teeth and snatched the heavy pills away. She said angrily, you don't have to go on, I'll just accept it. What a petty man. I've never seen someone as petty as you. Just you wait, when I'm stronger than you, I'll definitely not be petty with you. Chu Yang smiled and said, when you're stronger than me. Zi Shiqing was stunned for a while. Then she smiled gently and said as if she was joking, all right. I'll wait for the time when you're stronger than me. Then there needs to be a reward. Chu Yang laughed. If I'm stronger than you, what reward do you have? Zi Shiqing laughed and looked at Chu Yang from the side. She seemed to be smiling and yet not smiling. You're really thinking that there'll be such a day? Do you know how many tens of thousands of years it took for me to cultivate my cultivation? And you're only 20 years old this year. No matter how talented you are, do you think that you can catch up with me? Wait until your cultivation reaches the Supreme Being level and you've shattered the void, then you'll understand that this idea of yours is nothing more than a daydream. What are you laughing at? I'm serious. Chu Yang said seriously, even if I'm not stronger than you, I should have a goal, right? Zi Shiqing still couldn't stop laughing. Haha, you really look down on me? Chu Yang suddenly felt hurt and depressed. All right. If you're stronger than me, Zi Shiqing rolled her eyes and said indifferently, then I'll be on the same level as you, how about that? That won't do. If I'm stronger than you, I should be on the same level. Instead, I should be looking down on you. Why did it become a condition when it comes to you? Chu Yang was very dissatisfied. Zi Shiqing snorted and said proudly, all right. If one day your cultivation can be stronger than mine, then I can promise you anything unconditionally. Anything? Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Including spanking? By then if I want to return all the spanking you've given me these few days, will you be willing? Zi Shiqing blushed but said with a faint smile, that's right. If you want to return it, of course you can. I'm talking about anything. No matter what you want me to do or how you want me to do it, I'll promise you. Let me do whatever I want? Chu Yang squinted. Chapter 1103. Zi Sheqing gritted her teeth and said hatefully, yes, but the prerequisite is that you have to be stronger than me. However, little Chu Yang, this wish of yours will probably become your lifelong dream. So what if I agree to it? Chu Yang smiled mischievously. Deal? Zi Sheqing gritted her teeth. But, if you are not stronger than me, I will beat you up every time I see you. Chu Yang spread out his hands. Go ahead. It's not like I've been beaten up by you once or twice, Zi Sheqing snorted. Chu Yang, what you said to me tonight is a crime of molestation. I don't want to hear it again in the future. Chu Yang said lightly, don't worry, I won't say it in the future. Wait until I am stronger than you. Zi Sheqing snorted softly. It's a deal. I'll keep my word. The two of them slapped their palms together. Chu Yang's eyes were full of challenge while Zi Sheqing's eyes were full of arrogance and disdain. But both of them knew that this was not the other party's true feelings. I have something else for you. Chu Yang took out a piece of heaven-nourishing jade from the tribulation space. This is the heaven-nourishing jade. Until now I still don't know how to use it. So, take it. When you are free, help me figure out how to use it. Zi Sheqing's forced arrogance almost collapsed. She gritted her teeth and took it. Smiling, she said, all right, I will help you with this. Yes, also, this is a big bucket of spiritual spring water. Take it with you and see if there is any chance in the future to turn the spiritual spring water into the spring of life. Chu Yang took out a big bucket. It was the purple crystal bucket that Chu Lur bathed in the other day. Chu Yang and the sword spirit had turned it into a sealed space filled with spiritual spring water. More than a few hundred kilograms? All right, I will help you this time. Zi Sheqing smiled, her eyes a little dry. She hurriedly circulated her energy to maintain her calm. But her breathing was still a little erratic. I really don't have anything else. All right. Chu Yang took out a piece of mysterious ice jade core, a piece of mysterious yang jade core and a piece of heaven poison jade core. He passed it to Zi Sheqing and said, you can go around and help me analyze what these things are made of when you are free. Zi Sheqing chuckled, but her words got stuck in her throat. She turned her face away. This time she did not say anything and kept the 3 pieces of jade into her storage space. Then he said softly, I can't help you anymore. You're going to tire me out. Chu Yang laughed and said, actually, there's nothing else that I need your help with apart from these few things. Suddenly he slapped his thigh and said, oh right. There is one more thing that I need you to help me analyze. Zi Sheqing said, Chu Yang fished out a piece of purple crystal from his bosom. He covered it with his hand and it gave off a faint purple light. He said with a puzzled expression, look, this thing is very strange. What exactly is it? Zi Sheqing reached out to receive it and said, what? Purple crystals? Suddenly his entire body trembled. Chu Yang's hand was holding a ball of primordial purple vapor that had completely condensed into a substance. He pressed it into Zi Sheqing's hand. Once the primordial purple vapor was in Zi Sheqing's hand, the life origin energy that she had been cultivating for a long time suddenly recovered. It swallowed this ball of primordial purple vapor at lightning speed. It entered her meridians and circulated around, turning into the purest life origin energy. It disappeared without a trace. Zi Sheqing's eyes widened. Primordial purple vapor? Chu Yang scratched his head looking puzzled. Is this primordial purple vapor? What is primordial purple vapor? Zi Sheqing was angry and anxious. You. This is the life origin energy of heaven and earth. You. Such a big ball of substance and you actually gave it to me? You're the one who needs it the most. Chu Yang blinked mysteriously and chuckled. I still have a lot. The sword spirit said so. You only need this much. That's why I gave you this. Otherwise I can give you a lot more. Zi Sheqing sighed. Yes, this ball of primordial purple vapor of yours. Do you know how valuable it is? She couldn't let Chu Yang speak. She said, it's just this ball. As long as I go up and use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to completely digest it, my cultivation that was originally at a bottleneck can be improved further. And, this ball of primordial purple vapor of yours has completely recovered all my Tao state energy now. She paused and said, I'm talking about the Tao state energy that I had before I came to the heavenly continent, not just the Tao state energy that I need now to break through the space barrier. Do you understand? Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. This thing is so powerful? Zi Sheqing sighed. This is the life origin of the universe. How can the word powerful describe it? Yang was sweating. With your current cultivation, it's not enough to absorb the primordial purple vapor. You must remember just breathing should not be a problem. It can only cleanse the spirit and remove the impurities in the body. But if you want to use it for cultivation, you must at least reach the supreme grade and break through the barrier between heaven and man. Otherwise, your dantian will be burst by the primordial purple vapor. Yang was sweating. I'm just about to use it for cultivation. Reckless. Zisheching looked at Yang with a complicated expression. This time he really owed a lot. The primordial purple vapor was something that people would kill for even in the heavenly imperial court. This little one actually gave him a fist-sized and substantial piece. Luckily the sword spirit reminded him. If it was just a little more, even he wouldn't be able to bear it. And unlike ordinary people with this ball of primordial purple vapor, he could completely. Zisheching didn't know what to feel. She knew that Yang had instructed her to use all kinds of methods to give her things and ensure her safety. Seeing that Yang was only smiling, Zisheching glared at him. I'll settle this with you the next time we meet. Yang's shoulders shrank. Didn't you just help me with these few things? Just a little help. Look at you losing out. Zisheching sighed and said, with this, it'll be even harder for you to catch up with me and become stronger than me. The two of them didn't know when their eyes met. For a long time they didn't speak. Yang only felt that Zisheching's eyes were changing. One moment she was lost, the next moment she was gentle, and the next moment she was deep. When he looked at her again, there was a hint of shyness and sweetness. As Yang looked at her, he suddenly said as if he was in a dream, Big Sister Z, can I hug you? Zisheching didn't say anything. She just looked at him with a twinkle in her eyes and her long eyelashes fluttered. Yang felt that his lips were a little dry. He stuck out his tongue and licked it unconsciously. Emboldening himself, he gently reached out and pulled Zisheching's hand. Yang actually didn't use much strength, but Zisheching seemed to be suddenly pulled down by him at this moment. Her body slowly leaned into Yang's arms. Yang's arms wrapped around Zisheching's back. He paused for a moment before gently wrapping his arms around her delicate body. He hugged her gently. Zisheching sighed softly. Her jade-like face leaned on Yang's shoulder and she closed her eyes slightly. He was filled with fragrance. For a moment, Yang was somewhat intoxicated, but it was only for a moment before Zisheching violently broke free from Yang's arms. She said somewhat frantically, I almost forgot something important. As she said, she grinned and said, it's not early anymore. You should rest. I'll go and see Lure. She hurriedly turned and left as if she was running away. Yang couldn't help but twirl his fingers. It seemed that there was still a trace of warmth and smoothness on his fingertips. Zisheching had just walked to the door when Buluqing and Yulingxue landed in the courtyard with a swoosh. Their faces were full of anger. We didn't catch up. We even ate a bellyful of shit. Buluqing said gloomily. Yulingxue's face was ashen and very ugly. He only gave a simple greeting and went into the room to look for Feng Yuro. What happened? Yang sensitively felt that something was wrong. At that time he had discussed it with Zisheching. Once he won, he would be in extreme danger with the heaven-nourishing jade in his hands. Therefore he let Zisheching play the role of a bandit and get rid of the root cause first. When Buluqing and Yulingxue gave chase, they couldn't catch anything at all. Why did they come back like this? The Dharma Supreme invites a battle. Wu Jueching invites a battle. Buluqing's face was gloomy. After the Dharma Supreme nourishes the heavens, we will battle on Mount Xingyun. Yang said decisively, I'm not going. You can't not go. Buluqing's face was frighteningly ugly. Wu Jueching ambushed Old Ning. Old Ning's whereabouts are unknown now. I have to get to the bottom of this matter and know what happened to Old Ning. If I don't go and Wu Jueching also leaves, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find him again. Yang took a deep breath and his face became serious. Wu Jueching ambushed Ning Tianya? But with Ning Tianya's capabilities, even if he can't beat Wu Jueching, he shouldn't have lost his life, right? Wu Jueching joined forces with the Dharma Supreme to ambush Ning Tianya. Buluqing took a deep breath. Logically speaking, even if the two of them joined forces, Old Ning should be able to escape with his many tricks. But the Dharma Supreme said it was very serious. He clenched his left hand into a fist and hit his right palm hard. He said that if I go, he will tell me Old Ning's last words. Ning Tianya's last words. Yang and Zisheching looked at each other. At the same time they thought of the sword intent. If Wu Jueching was in the middle of a battle and suddenly released the sword intent while attacking from two sides, Ning Tianya's chances were indeed not high. No matter what, I have to go to this battle. Bu Luqing gritted his teeth, his eyes somewhat ferocious. If old Ning is still alive, I will also avenge him. If old Ning, I will avenge him even more. Bu Luqing and Ning Qinya had battled for tens of thousands of years. They had already forged a solid friendship. Otherwise, with their status and arrogance, how could they really accept the same disciple? Now that Ning Qinya was in trouble, Bu Luqing was undoubtedly the most anxious one. Chu Yang's brows were tightly knitted. He realized the seriousness of this matter. Chapter 1104. Chu Yang had to admit that the other party's plan had already succeeded. Bu Liuqing's plan was originally the most difficult to move. But now he was the first to be moved and agreed to the duel. With news of Ning Qinya and bad news at that, Bu Luqing would crawl over even if he had to break his leg. And once he went, if he could not achieve his goal, Bu Luqing would rather die than retreat. There was no doubt about this. This meant that Bu Luqing was already locked in this duel. As long as the other party was strong enough, they could kill Bu Luqing there. But how could Chu Yang persuade him when faced with such feelings? Chu Yang sighed. You only invited yourself? Ning Qinya said, no, there's also the Moon Breeze couple. The Dharma Supreme invited them to end their 10,000-year feud on the same day and at the same place. 10,000-year feud? Chu Yang asked in surprise, what feud do they have? The Moon Breeze couple's teacher was the previous Dharma Supreme. Bu Luqing sighed. He died in the hands of this Dharma Supreme. Today the Dharma Supreme has spoken of this matter clearly. Chu Yang sighed, his mouth full of bitterness. In that case the Moon Breeze couple has to go. They have to go. Bu Luqing nodded heavily. And it's also a duel to the death. It's just a duel and 3 out of the 4 experts on our side have been taken away at the same time. Chu Yang was a little speechless. Haven't you considered that this is a huge trap that's enough to kill all of you? Bu Luqing looked up at the sky and said indifferently, a real man has to do what he doesn't do and what he must do. It's enough to have a noble heart and a stable conscience. As for other things, if necessary, even if I die 1,000 times, I won't look back. This duel, even if I know it's a trap, I still have to go. Bu Luqing said word by word, even though I know that I will die if I go, I still have to go. Chu Yang sighed. He could understand Bu Luqing and the Moon Breeze couple's decision. Just like him, if the other party had made the duel with the safety of Meng Chaoran, Gu Duxing and the others, would he have gone? There was no need to doubt it. There was no need to consider it. It was precisely because he understood that he felt powerless. Because Chu Yang was certain that as long as the 3 of them went, they would definitely be buried in Mount Xingyun. Previously he was still considering it. What kind of method did the other party have to use to force these people to the point that they couldn't even escape? But now it seemed to be a simple matter. For people like the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing, once they agreed to a battle, they would definitely have absolute confidence in winning. Could kill the enemy. Otherwise they wouldn't have moved at all. Chu Yang, if I unfortunately die, Qingwu, I'll leave him in your care. Bu Luqing said indifferently, if old Ning is still alive, he will naturally come back. If he is dead, little Wu will only have you in the future. You must not bully her. Chu Yang still hadn't answered. The door to Yu Lingshua's room opened. The Moon Breeze couple led Wu Qianqian out slowly. The husband and wife were dressed in snow-white robes. As they stood in the snow, it was as if they had become one with the world. Feng Yuro said, Chu Yang, I have a presumptuous request. Chu Yang smiled bitterly, please go ahead. 3 days later I will head to Mount Xingyun with Zhang Yang. A battle with the Dharma Supreme. This trip bodes ill rather than well. If the 2 of us die in battle at Mount Xingyun, then I'll leave Qianqian to you. Feng Yuro stared deeply into Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Yang, don't forget your promise to Qianqian. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. He hadn't done anything yet and 2 people had already come to entrust him with his orphanage. I don't care if you have multiple wives. I don't care how you arrange them. I don't care about your scruples. Feng Yuro, this woman who had always been weak, showed her tough side at this moment. She said decisively, anyway, you have to give Qianqian. Leave a place for her. Let her be happy. Let her be happy. Master. Wu Qianqian called out. Her tears were on the verge of dripping. She was about to cry but immediately blushed in embarrassment. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Suddenly he said in an earth-shattering rage, are you so sure that you will die on this trip? You can't wait to entrust me with your orphanage. Do you know that you are extremely lacking in self-confidence? If you don't even have confidence in yourselves, how can you defeat the enemy and return victorious? Motherfucker, entrust everything to me. If I die, who do I entrust to? Chu Yang was furious. All of you are people who can dominate the world. Don't you have the confidence to return safely after killing all the enemies? You have Lady Z by your side. You won't die. Bu Luqing nodded at Zi Sheqing and said, Lady Z, the safety of this place is entrusted to you. Zi Sheqing smiled bitterly. What's the use of entrusting it to me? The three of you are the main force. After all, I'm about to leave this continent. If all of you die and I leave, then the few of you left here can only be bullied to death. Zi Sheqing smiled lightly. Bu Luqing, Feng and you, the three of you have lived for a long time. In these years you have enemies all over the world, right? And every one of your enemies is not weak. If all of you die and your disciples have not fully matured, think about it, how will they deal with your disciples? Especially when it's such a beautiful female disciple. Even if Chu Yang has 3 heads and 3 arms, he's only a martial saint. Any random first-grade supreme martial artist would be able to defeat all of them. How many of your enemies are first-grade supreme martial artists? Not to mention more, at least 100? When you go to the battle 3 days later, can you kill all of them? Zi Sheqing said lightly, you can go and fight, go and kill and have fun. If you die, so be it. If you die, even if the enemy salts your corpses into bacon, you won't feel anything. But have you thought about this? Bu Luqing and Feng and you broke out in cold sweat. That's right, the three of them had countless enemies. When they were around, even if their enemies were right in front of them, they would have to kneel and talk to them. They wouldn't even dare to cough loudly. But what if they weren't around? Only a disciple with weak cultivation would be left behind. And a female disciple at that. The three of them didn't dare to think further. If the three of them died and Zi Sheqing left, then what awaited Mo Qinggu, Wu Chanshan and the rest would definitely be torture and humiliation worse than death. Even Chu Yang and the rest would be the same. It's easy to die if you're generous, but difficult to endure humiliation. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. Please consider carefully. But this kind of vengeance must be avenged. Bu Luqing gritted his teeth and took a few deep breaths. Our children and grandchildren have their own blessings. Only when they've been through hardships can they become towering trees. We can't possibly protect them forever. Some things will have to be faced sooner or later. Feng and you also nodded solemnly. Chu Yang sighed. What was to come would eventually come. The other party had already figured out the personalities of these few people. The trap that they set was irresistible no matter what. All right. Then take care of yourselves. Chu Yang waved his hand coldly. People like us also need to get used to the feeling of being alone and without anyone to depend on as soon as possible. Die cleanly. Bu Luqing and Feng and Yu's faces twitched. They both felt that this little guy really didn't listen to them. At this moment, in such an atmosphere of grief and indignation, they actually had the urge to slap him hard. Then, everyone stayed in the courtyard for a while. Under Chu Yang's urging, they all returned to their own rooms. Chu Yang gave Zi Sheqing a look. Brother Bu, Feng and you, I would like to discuss some matters with the three of you. Zi Sheqing said knowingly, please wait for me here for a while. Under the puzzled gazes of Bu Luqing and the other two, Zi Sheqing turned and returned to her room. Chu Yang snorted and left in a huff. In the room, Chu Yang took out 3 small balls of primordial violet vapor at the fastest speed, giving Zi Sheqing a shock. Are you sure you want to do this? Zi Sheqing lowered her voice. It's better than watching them die. Chu Yang shrugged his shoulders. Zi Sheqing laughed. Chu Yang, you're really not a stingy person. You must know that this kind of thing is also a treasure even in the heavenly imperial court. Giving them these today is enough for them to form their life force origin. As long as they don't die after this battle, it's equivalent to creating a staircase for them to ascend to the heavens. Chu Yang smiled lightly. It's better than us going up alone, right? These few people are very bad-tempered, but I have to admit that they are all good people and very cute. It's better to have fewer people like them die. Zi Sheqing laughed. Chu Yang said, but I can't take out these things personally. If I do, all my secrets will be exposed. So, I'll only give Bu Luqing an incomplete version of the heavy pill as a backup. As for Feng and you, they only have primordial violet vapor. If they get injured, I'll leave the incomplete version of the heavy pill with you. Once there's a situation you can tear open the space and go over immediately, then give it to them immediately. How's that? Zi Sheqing said cheerfully, that's for the best. Feng and you were naturally reliable, but they were a classic example of a ruler. A ruler could be easily bullied. Before Chu Yang's power was fully developed, he couldn't take any risks. So, he could only fake Zi Sheqing to do these things. With Zi Sheqing's cultivation and identity, Even if she took out the incomplete version of the heavy pill and said that it was refined by her, no one would doubt it. Because she had the power and qualifications. What's more, the heavy pill was a legend. Apart from Tribulation Swordmaster and Tribulation, there were people who had seen the heavy pill before, but they were not the few people in front of him. When Zi Sheqing came out again, her face was a little pale. She walked to the front of the three people and said lightly, "I'll give the three of you some small things to increase your chances of success in this battle." As she said, she flipped her hand and 3 clouds of purple vapor entered the foreheads of the 3 people at lightning speed. Instantly, a cloud of purple vapor rose from the 3 people's bodies. Then they sweated profusely. But it was surprisingly comfortable, as if even their souls and divine senses were purified at this moment. Life force origin? Bu Luqing was knowledgeable and couldn't help but exclaim. Chapter 1105. The Moon Breeze couple instantly turned pale with fright. This Lady Z actually extracted so much life force origin energy and gave it to them? This great kindness, they really didn't know how to repay it. Zi Sheqing said indifferently, "This is all I can help you with. The 3 of you take care." The 3 of them said gratefully, "Don't mention it, Lady Z. Today's gift is enough to be engraved in our hearts for life." Zi Sheqing turned and was about to leave when she suddenly threw a purple crystal bottle to Bu Luqing. "This is for you. You know what this is?" Bu Luqing caught it with a complicated expression on his face and said, "Yes, I know what this is." Zi Sheqing was silent for a moment before she said, "Stay alive." She turned and left. The 3 of them stood in the snow with complicated expressions. After a long time, they all sat cross-legged and started to meditate. Another place. In the secret chamber of the Zhuge clan. The Dharma Supreme sat on a red sandalwood chair, looking down expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "Is everything ready?" Yi Di, who was at the head of the line, replied, "The Yi clan is ready. All the required manpower has also arrived. The Ling clan is ready. The Shao clan is ready. The Shi clan is ready. The clan is ready. The Lan clan is ready. The Qin clan is ready." The last one, Zhuge Hutu, coughed and bowed. "The great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array is ready. The supreme martial artist experts of the Zhuge clan are also ready. We are just waiting for the Dharma Supreme's orders." The Dharma Supreme's deep gaze swept across everyone. He said indifferently, "This time, as a precaution, I have mobilized 50 supreme martial artist experts from the law enforcement officers. In this way, the law enforcement officers have mobilized a total of 300 supreme martial artists. The 8 super clans have a total of 411 supreme martial artists. A total of experts. 711 supreme martial artists are participating in this slaying of Tao operation." The Dharma Supreme's voice was stern. "Including everyone here, Brother Wu and me, there are 771 supreme martial artists. Such a lineup is unprecedented in the heavens. It is also the first time in the history of the heavens that so many experts have gathered together for a grand operation. The strength of the enemy. Unprecedented strength. This is also the appearance of the heavens. The first extreme grade expert. Everyone, don't let your guard down." Zhuge Hutu said, "Lord Dharma Supreme, we have already arranged everything. However, whether or not they will come in, this matter still needs to be discussed." A gentle smile appeared on the Dharma Supreme's face as he said indifferently, "Over there. You have accepted my challenge. You don't have to worry about this. They will definitely come." Zhuge Hutu was flabbergasted. He did not expect the Dharma Supreme to settle everything without a word. However, why would the other party agree to such an obvious trap? This matter was truly inconceivable. The ones who agreed to the duel were Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue. Feng Yuro. There are 3 of them. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "Brother Wu has already rushed to Mount Xingyun in advance to make arrangements. What everyone has to take note of is, our focus is not on these 3 people. Furthermore, for some reason, even if they were chased away, they wouldn't run away. Therefore, everyone must be on guard against a battle to the death. We're just waiting for the 3 of them to arrive. Don't open the array for now. Then use the tactic of taking turns to exhaust them. Surround them but don't kill them. Try to make the situation as tense as possible. The more serious the injuries, the better. However, as long as that mysterious woman doesn't appear, that is, the array won't be activated." A sinister smile appeared on the Dharma Supreme's face. He said, "Bu Liuqing's might has shaken the world, dominating the world for 10,000 years. Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue's might has also shaken the heavens these few years. All 3 of them are unparalleled experts. Everyone, are you interested in teasing unparalleled experts? Seeing the experts of the past being toyed with like pigs and dogs under your siege? Everyone, this is enough to comfort you for the rest of your lives. Everyone roared with laughter. Anyway, as long as that mysterious woman doesn't appear, all of you can play to your heart's content. Once that woman arrives, then at the same time that she arrives, Jianghu, you are in charge of immediately activating the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array. From the moment that mysterious woman enters the array, fight with all your might, using your life to fight for her life. Injury for injury. We must kill that female attacker in the shortest time possible. No matter what kind of sacrifice you have to make, it will be worth it. The Dharma Supreme said this heavily. His eyes were cold and callous as he looked at the crowd. He said indifferently, "Everyone, do you remember this?" Yes. Yi Di was the first to speak. "Rest assured, Lord Dharma Supreme. We are no longer inexperienced and know the severity of the situation. Even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we must kill that woman. Otherwise the big clans will really be finished." "Good." The Dharma Supreme nodded, his gaze dark and gloomy. "There's one more thing. When that woman enters the Great Array, the Martial Saint experts left behind to guard Tianji City must prepare a team to attack the Orchard Palace with all their might. They must kill Chuyang and the rest. This is a two-pronged attack." The Dharma Supreme said, "However, the attack cannot be too early. We must wait until that mysterious woman enters the array. Do you understand?" Jianghu stood up, straightened his back and agreed loudly. "However, everyone must take note of one thing. That disciple of Buluqing, that girl in red, if you can capture her alive, try to keep her alive. It would be a pity to kill such an innate spirit meridian." The Dharma Supreme said solemnly. Everyone nodded in agreement and smiled bleakly. Lord Dharma Supreme still loves talent after all. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said indifferently, "Talent must be used by me, only then can I love it. If not, I still have to kill them. If I nurture a tiger, then I will really fail miserably and embarrass myself." Everyone burst into laughter. "Also, that Chuyang, the heaven-nourishing jade, has already been stolen. Although I don't know who did it, the person who did it is definitely not from Chuyang's side. This means that the future trouble has been removed. Moreover, Chuyang has already poisoned." The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, "I will not say more about the importance of this battle. Everyone knows it well. I will only say one thing. There cannot be any mistakes in the slaying of Tao battle." Everyone nodded solemnly. Everyone understood the importance of this battle. If they were defeated with such a lineup, then the fate of the big clans was basically sealed. There would be no hope of a comeback. "All right. Everyone, disperse and make your preparations. At the same time, prepare for the heaven-nourishing jade 3 days later." The Dharma Supreme waved his hand. Everyone stood up. No matter who it was, their faces were equally solemn and resolute as they walked out. The Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back. Watching everyone leave, he said in a low voice, "This battle. How many heroes have shed their blood for justice? How many heroes have not returned? Everyone. Tomorrow night, I will personally host a banquet and drink to my heart's content with my brothers." The 8-second Grandmasters shuddered. They wanted to say something but didn't in the end. They walked out silently. A few people. Their eyes were already filled with gratitude. Orchard Palace. Chuyang sat in front of the window, staring at the heavy snow outside. This heavy snow had been falling for a total of 17 days since it started. Nearly half of the residences in Tianji City had already collapsed from the heavy burden. The Zhuge clan was preparing for war and didn't come up with any effective measures. Instead, it was the Diwu clan under the Zhuge clan that spared no effort in providing disaster relief during this period. The door opened. Meng Qiaoran walked in with snowflakes all over his body. He smiled and said, "Yang, thinking about the battle 3 days later again?" Chuyang smiled bitterly. "Teacher, how are you?" "Me. I'm very happy." Meng Qiaoran smiled gently. "Your teacher's wife is still unconscious. I just fed her something before she wakes up. I asked Hangwu out for a drink, haha." As he spoke, he took out a plate of peanuts and a few pieces of lotus root from the cupboard with practiced ease. Then he took out a jar of wine and placed it on the table. 2 wine cups were placed opposite each other. Meng Qiaoran sat down. He lifted the wine jar and filled both cups with wine. He said calmly, Yang, actually, you don't have to worry about anything. Life and death, it's just a boundary. It's fine as long as you work hard. Victory or defeat is determined by the heavens." Chuyang smiled bitterly. "If you take things too seriously, you'll care. If you care, you'll feel pressure. When you feel pressure, your heart will feel heavy. When you feel heavy, you'll feel anxious. When you feel anxious, you'll make mistakes. Meng Chaoran said calmly, let me tell you something. Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go. Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go? Chu Yang murmured. Meng Chaoran was no longer paying attention to him. He raised his cup in invitation. It seemed that there was someone sitting opposite him with a smile on his face. Meng Chaoran smiled rather happily. Hanwu, it's still snowing heavily today. Looking at the snowflakes, I thought of your name. Ah, Hanwu in the cold snow. Come, come, come. With such beautiful scenery, how can we not drink? As he spoke, he drained his cup in one gulp. He leaned over attentively and picked up the wine cup opposite him. He gently splashed the wine on the ground, put it back in place and filled it up again. Every time I drink with you, you're always indignant, jealous and scolding me. Haha, you've never admitted that I'm your brother all your life. But now you can't deny it, right? Cheers. Chu Yang's eyes stung. He said bitterly, Teacher, there's no need to persuade me. Meng Chaoran waved his hand. I'm not crazy nor am I deranged. I know that Hanwu has already passed away. But just because he's gone, it doesn't mean that the relationship is also gone. It's gone. Because I'm still here. I'm here, the relationship is here. As long as the relationship is here, the brother is here. As long as the brother is here, we'll drink. We'll enjoy ourselves to the fullest. Meng Chaoran said, life and death are all the same. As he spoke, he drank another cup. Then he waved his cup at Hanwu and said with a chuckle, Don't you agree, Hanwu? Then Meng Chaoran chuckled. It's rare that we share the same view. Come on, brother, let's drink. I've always thought that I owed you, but now I realize that I was wrong. I don't owe you, but you owe me. You died a bloody and heroic death, but you made me. Let's not talk about it anymore. Anyway, if there's a next life, you'll have to pay me back. Ah. Chu Yang's heart ached. He could vaguely see that opposite Meng Chaoran, Ling Hanwu's clothes were as white as snow. There was a smile on his face as he raised his cup and drank. The corners of his eyes were full of the joy of a good friend's reunion. Chu Yang only felt a sudden itch in his throat. He held his breath and walked out quietly. He left this space for the two brothers who had been through life and death together. He quietly closed the door. From inside, Meng Chaoran's voice could be vaguely heard as if saying, What are you worried about? Chapter 1106. When he walked out, he saw Wu Qianshan standing in the snow. She was dressed in black and looked bloated. He didn't know how long she had been standing in the snow. You're protecting the three of them? Chu Yang was hit by the incoming snowflakes. He felt his mind go from chaos to clarity in the blink of an eye. Yes. Wu Qianshan looked at the three people who were almost buried in the snow. She said softly, I know they don't need me to protect them, but I still want to do it. I understand how you feel. Chu Yang said quietly. He walked slowly in front of her and patted her. The snowflakes on Wu Qianshan's body fell off. Her feet were obviously higher. Wu Qianshan hugged her shoulders. Her clear eyes looked even more misty in the snow. She looked at Chu Yang in confusion and said, Chu Yang, can I ask you something? Chu Yang said, Go ahead. Wu Qianshan's eyes flashed. She asked softly, The person you said you fell in love with, is not Mo Qingwu, is it? Chu Yang was silent for a while. He took a deep breath and said, Yes. Wu Qianshan's eyes widened. Chu Yang, you. Wu Qianshan felt like vomiting blood. You were in the lower three heavens. You arrived at Iron Cloud 2.5 years ago, right? Then you met Mo Qingwu within a few months. I know about this matter. Mo Qingwu is now 13 years old. At that time she was only 10? You fell in love with her? Wu Qianshan's lips trembled. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that her love rival was so strong, so powerful, so peerless, so beautiful. In Wu Qianshan's heart, only Zi Sheqing could completely fit the criteria of her imaginary love rival. But she didn't expect that she would be defeated by a little girl who was still wet behind the ears. No. Not just then. Even now she was still wet behind the ears. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. How should he explain this? Wu Qianshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looked at Chu Yang suspiciously and said, Chu Yang, you don't have some kind of fetish? Nonsense. Minister Chu's face turned red. Or perhaps, a certain aspect of your mind is still stuck at 11 or 12 years old. Wu Qianshan looked at Chu Yang with her beautiful eyes. The hidden bitterness in her eyes had disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by amusement and ridicule. There was also a sense of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Chuyang was battered and exhausted. This was the first time he had been so embarrassed, especially in front of Wu Qianqian. Haha. Wu Qianqian laughed without caring about her image. Chuyang, you've really surprised me. Cough 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 cough. Chuyang rubbed his nose. Then he pulled Wu Qianqian awkwardly. Let's talk here. Chuyang pulled Qianqian to Wu Qianqian's room. Chuyang said with a bitter face, how can there be such a thing? What nonsense are you guessing? Someone heard it. Wu Qianqian snorted and said, what's going on? All of a sudden, a thought flashed across Zhang Shen's mind as he asked, you said that you have already owed someone your entire life. Could it be that you are referring to her? And L, ref equals and quo, and L slash and G. It's her. Chuyang nodded deeply. Wu Qianqian was speechless. He couldn't figure it out. She is only 13 years old. When did you owe her your entire life? There are reasons for this. It's very complicated. Chuyang said, I will explain it to you if I have time in the future. Wu Qianqian nodded. Then she suddenly frowned and said somewhat inexplicably, Chuyang, I have been upset these past few days. It seems that something is going to happen. Moreover, I often dream of my mother. Chuyang smiled and said, you miss your mother? Wu Qianqian rolled her eyes and said, my mother passed away not long after I was born. Chuyang replied with an oh. Then he said apologetically, I didn't know about this. Wu Qianqian's eyes were bleak as she said, in my dream I could feel the warmth of my mother's embrace. My mother told me that she was waiting for me over there. Chuyang interrupted her and said angrily, what nonsense is this? Wu Qianqian said, but this is a real dream. Chuyang waved his hand, dreams are all illusions. I also dreamed that I married all the beauties in the world. Moreover, I did it more than once. But will that really happen? Wu Qianqian sighed. She was somewhat absent-minded. After a long time she said, Chuyang, the war is coming. If I die in this war, will you tell others that you owe me a lifetime? Chuyang was frightened. He shouted angrily, you won't die. This question is very inexplicable. It's simply nonsense. With a bang, Chuyang pushed open the door and walked out. Wu Qianqian sighed softly in the room. These past few days she indeed had a strange dream every day. In the dream she was slowly walking on a dark road. There was no one around. Between the heaven and earth, there was only darkness. She was alone. She was extremely scared. Every time this happened, her mother would be waving at her from afar. Wu Qianqian slowly closed her eyes and muttered, that's the Yellow Springs Road, right? Could it be that I'm very close to that road? Chuyang rushed out distraught. However, he wasn't really angry. He suddenly remembered a sentence in the past. That old fortune-teller had said something. Yin and Yang must cherish the beauty of the beautiful. Could it be that it would happen here? Chuyang frowned and quickened his steps toward Zi Sheqing's room. If we strike first and gain the upper hand, what will happen? Once he entered, Chuyang asked decisively. Strike first and gain the upper hand? Zi Sheqing was startled. We strike first and attack first. Chuyang said softly. The other party's forces are too scattered. Zi Sheqing frowned and said, the other party is planning a war and an ambush. What we are looking forward to is also a war like this. You must know that I will leave Bu Luqing and Feng and you won't be able to follow all of you forever. You still have to walk your own path in the future. If we strike first and can't kill all of them, it will be a terrible disaster. And this war, to them, is a chance to eliminate us and get rid of the big problem in their hearts. But to us it's also a way to get things done once and for all. You are now in the open. Your clan is also in the open because of you. If you don't have the power to protect yourself, how can you do it? Zi Sheqing said lightly, I still lean towards the war. I know you are worried that once all of you leave we won't be their match. But it's too risky to enter the trap and fight passively like this. Chuyang gritted his teeth and said, can't we change it? No. Zi Sheqing said firmly. Chuyang stood for a while, took a deep breath, turned and went out. In a flash, he disappeared into the vast snowstorm. In Zi Sheqing's consciousness, Chu Yang's figure sped through the snowstorm and changed a few times. His entire shape changed and he rushed in a certain direction like a meteor. Diwu clan. I want to see Diwu Qingru. Chuyang kicked open the door of the Diwu clan and barged in aggressively. Who are you? Following a loud noise, many people rushed out. One of them looked at Chuyang in shock and doubt. Tell Diwu Qingru that a sworn friend from the lower three heavens is here to visit. Chuyang said lightly. Sworn friend? That person looked at Chuyang in shock and doubt. Go quickly. Chu Yang's eyes widened, and an awe-inspiring aura of a sword saint burst out. Please wait for a moment. That person looked at the shattered door and his eyes changed. He was afraid of delaying the important matter. Besides, the person in front of him was not someone ordinary guards could deal with. He left in a flash. After a while he ran back. Lord Qingru invites you to the side courtyard. Side courtyard? Chu Yang tilted his head. Lord Diwu's private courtyard. Under normal circumstances he will be there and not in the clan. That person nodded and bowed, showing infinite respect. He pointed in the direction. I'll bring you there. After reporting to Diwu Qingru, when Diwu Qingru heard the words sworn friends of the lower three heavens, his expression immediately changed. It could even be clearly seen that his hands trembled for a moment. Then he said, quick, invite him in. The sooner the better. Diwu Qingru had never shown such urgency. It seemed that this person was really important. In the side courtyard, Chu Yang finally met Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru's courtyard was full of snow and there were no signs of cleaning. Diwu Qingru stood in front of the bamboo forest with his hands behind his back, smiling at Chu Yang who walked in. Go back, Diwu Qingru said to the person leading the way and rewarded him with a piece of purple crystal. That person was overjoyed and turned to leave. I'm here today to tell you that you and I have never been friends nor enemies. We have always been rivals. Chu Yang went straight to the point. But rivals can also work together. So, I'm here today to ask you to do me a favor. Diwu Qingru smiled and said, decisive battle? Yes. I need some information, Chu Yang said indifferently. But you have to know that the information you want may not be useful. Diwu Qingru smiled. To some people there's nothing they can't give up. I know, but I can't just sit and wait, Chu Yang said. It's extremely dangerous this time. The heart of a strong person is unpredictable. The Dharma Supreme made use of human nature and pride. Although he knew it was a trap, a strong person could only jump into it. Because he couldn't retreat. If he retreated, he would be retreating from friendship and that would be an inner demon. It may seem simple but it's very difficult to resolve. Diwu Qingru said slowly. That's right. This was what Chu Yang was worried about. Diwu Qingru took out the hands behind his back. In his hands was a stack of papers. This is the information of the people who are currently in Qinji City and can be of some use to them. If you don't come, I will send it to you. However, these can only be of some use and can't affect the overall situation. You should know this in your heart. Diwu Qingru smiled indifferently. I have already prepared the things that can affect the overall situation for you. That's the real reason why I'm looking for you even if you don't come. Chapter 1107. Chu Yang nodded heavily. I know. But even if it's just a little bit, I'll still do it. But what's the real reason that can affect the overall situation that you're talking about? Diwu Qingru smiled and said meaningfully, actually, even if I don't intervene, if it's just a battle like this, they may not win and you may not lose. Chu Yang smiled lightly. Of course, but I have to fight for every bit of help, even if it's insignificant. Diwu Qingru said, yes, but you've already helped me a lot. This time I don't owe you any favors. Chu Yang laughed out loud. You deliberately said this because you want me to remember this favor of yours. Fifth, you're too cunning. Diwu Qingru shook his head and smiled. It's not that I'm cunning, but you think too badly of me. The two laughed in unison. This time, the Zhuge clan has transferred a few people from the Diwu clan. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed slightly. He said, by then there'll be a Wu character on their bodies. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Diwu, this time I must owe you a favor. Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. I also have my own plans. I've harmed you so many times, I have to let you get back a little. Sending charcoal in the snow is better than adding flowers to brocade. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Chu Yang clasped his hands and flew up like a goose feather. I'll remember your help. Diwu Qingru's voice came into his ears. Don't die. Then he pondered for a while and said, are the people transferred from the Diwu clan ready? A voice in the dark said, of course. This time there's really going to be a change. Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. If it doesn't work, there'll always be some clues to follow. Once they're discovered, they'll be destroyed together with them. If it succeeds, Diwu will rise. This is a huge gamble. Diwu Qingru stood in the snow and sighed deeply. This is with the tens of thousands of years of inheritance of the clan and everyone's lives. Together as the stake, a huge gamble. Chu Yang's figure was hidden in the snow. He changed more than 10 directions, changed more than 10 body movements and changed more than 10 body shapes. Finally he quietly entered an inn. Nangong Shifeng and the others were staying here. After Chu Yang came in, he made some urgent arrangements. Let Nangong Shifeng and the rest retreat immediately. The big clans naturally knew that Nangong Shifeng had been collecting information for him during this period of time. After the great battle, no matter what, Nangong and the others would be noticed and retaliated against. This was something that could be predicted. Even now, many people were already paying attention to the movements of Nangong Shifeng and the others. During this period of time, although Nangong Shifeng and the others still looked ugly when they went out, in fact, everyone had been treated well by Chu Yang. He was no different from a normal person. Chu Yang took out a big bag of purple crystals and placed it on the table. Then he took out a few elixirs and said, "Passing wind, the war is about to start. Bring your brothers out of Tianji City immediately. I will contact you. If my side loses, don't ever appear in Jianghu again. These purple crystals are enough for you to live on. Take these pills. They can cure all kinds of poisons. Let's not waste any more words and hurry out of the city. The sooner the better." Nangong Shifeng was excited and said, "Young Master Chu is so righteous. Am I, Nangong Shifeng, such a coward? Let's fight it out with them." Chu Yang patted his shoulder and said, "Don't be rash. Your skills are a little weak. It's not worth it to lose your lives for nothing." He urged them again and again before he finally convinced them. But their eyes were already full of tears. No one was willing to look at an ugly person in the eye except Chu Yang. He treated them sincerely. This feeling of being respected, relied on and cared for was unforgettable for Nangong Shifeng. Chu Yang asked Wei Wuyan and the others. Only then did he know that they had already left Tianji City and their whereabouts were unknown. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. Under Chu Yang's arrangement, Nangong Shifeng and the others washed away the color on their faces. Then they disguised themselves and walked out one by one. They went back and forth a few times, bought some food and wine and placed them on the table. The fragrance of the wine spread far and wide, but Nangong and the others, who should have been in the inn, had already disappeared without a trace. After a long time, Chu Yang jumped up and took a big detour. Then he went back to the orchard palace. After he went back, Chu Yang immediately found Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong. The three brothers disguised themselves again. Dressed in white, they disappeared into the wind and snow. "Why do you want to catch these people?" Rui Budong looked at the men and women in his hands and was a little puzzled. Chu Yang took out a piece of paper and looked at it. He said, "This guy gave me really good stuff. These guys are the illegitimate children of several important people in the Zhuge clan. Illegitimate children usually have a kind of love and guilt. So, it can tug at their heartstrings even more." Chu Yang said, "Hide these guys well and then go catch others." The three of them ran back and forth in the wind and snow. Until late at night they actually caught more than 30 people. Among them there were the illegitimate children of important people in the Zhuge clan, the mistresses and mistresses of certain people in other clans, as well as the contacts of some important business channels. They also followed the directions of Diwu Qingrou's 2 maps and ransacked the 2 secret treasuries of the Zhuge clan. They also robbed 8 shops of the Zhuge clan. They swept away all the important and valuable things. In particular, the few important intelligence contacts were directly killed by the 3 of them. That night, the people in Tianji City were in a state of panic. The Zhuge clan was in a mess that night. There were fights, investigations, crying wives. There were people cursing in exasperation. "These will be useful, but it won't affect the overall situation," Dong Wuxiang said affirmatively. "Of course we're also trying our best. Send out the information of these people. No matter what, let's create chaos for a while first." Chu Yang sneered. "Especially when the clan is in chaos, it's impossible for the supreme martial artist experts to not be affected. Even if there's just a little bit of impatience, it will also have an effect. Besides, control the hostages well. If they want to deal with us, they will definitely be led by the Zhuge clan. Among these people we control, as long as one of them is the family member of the leading expert of the Zhuge clan, then we can be in a stalemate for a while." Chu Yang said, "With our current strength we can't help at all in the battle over there. But we have to let them have no worries." Under the efforts of Chu Yang and the others, the entire Tianji city was filled with complaints in the shortest time. In these 2 days there were curses everywhere. All the big and small people in Tianji city were affected. The business of the Zhuge clan was almost paralyzed. Rumors about every important person flew all over the place. There was even a group of people who were secretly adding fuel to the fire. Many people anxiously finished their clan meetings with heavy hearts. When they returned home they were badly beaten by their wives. There were even people who killed their wives in anger. At first the people of the other clans were happy to watch the show. But later on they realized that the storm was getting worse and worse. When they wanted to stop it, it was already not something that could be done in a day or two. This matter also made Jianghu a little frustrated and irritable. Although he knew that this was the enemy's trick, he just couldn't control himself from getting angry. In such a torturous situation, the third day finally arrived. Venerable One nourishing the heavens. Early in the morning, the Dharma Supreme and the others were already done with their preparations. They gathered at the entrance of the medicine banquet and stood quietly under the dancing snowflakes. Jianghu's expression was very bad. His clan brother actually had so many shameful things. This made Jianghu feel a little ashamed in front of the others. The Dharma Supreme walked out slowly. Sweeping his gaze, he said, "Are you all ready?" "Ready." Everyone present shouted at the same time. The Li clan was absent. The Dharma Supreme had chosen one of his 2 guards to participate in the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens. Good. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "When the array is activated, a hole will appear in the void. Everyone send these pieces of heaven-nourishing jade into the hole at the same time. And use all the energy in your body to seal the hole. Only when the hole disappears can you withdraw your energy." The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "I will preside over the array. There are 200 supreme martial artists outside. Everyone can do it without worry." Okay. Yi Di and the others nodded solemnly. The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh of relief and stood still. The next moment he suddenly rose into the air and floated in the air, as if he was weightless, slowly flying up. Wherever he flew, the snowflakes would automatically melt away. In the snow-covered sky, his black robe was actually so dazzling. He flew 100 feet into the air. The Dharma Supreme shouted, "Activate the array." In an instant, 200 experts activated their energy at the same time, activating the array that had already been prepared underground. A dazzling white light suddenly shot out from the ground. It was at least a few feet thick and shone directly on the Dharma Supreme's body. The Dharma Supreme's body was affected by the white light and his whole body shook. His long hair suddenly stood up and danced in the air. His black robe fluttered violently and he shot 1,000 feet into the air like a shooting star. His body suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. He shook his arms and shouted, "Heaven, boundless cold, awe-inspiring water, vast mountains, I am willing to turn my body into a tribulation and nourish the heavens with my loyal heart and blood." Before he finished his sentence, as if he had activated a mysterious energy between heaven and earth, the whole world suddenly trembled. The mountains and rivers around Tianji City also trembled at this moment. The trembling became more and more intense. Gradually, from far to the present, from heaven to earth, waves of clear ripples appeared and swept over. The Dharma Supreme shouted, "Heaven have mercy! Activate the nourishing of the heavens." In midair there was a loud boom of thunder. It was early in the morning and in the middle of winter, but there was actually thunder rumbling violently. The snowy sky suddenly turned pitch black. A perfectly round hole suddenly appeared in this pitch-black land, 1,000 feet above the Dharma Supreme's head. "I will continue to work hard. No matter what, I must finish writing the 10th chapter. G. Chapter 1108. Every hole that appeared out of nowhere shone with sparkling white light. They formed a huge circle, and in the middle was the Dharma Supreme's figure standing proudly. The Dharma Supreme let out a long howl, his eyes shooting out a sharp black light and his body emitting a white light, locking onto the hole. "Do it!" the Dharma Supreme shouted. All the supreme martial artists rose into the air at the same time. When they were 100 feet into the air, that white light connected their bodies together. From this person to that person the edges and corners were distinct. It was as if a huge quadrilateral had appeared in the air. The heaven-nourishing jade in everyone's hands was emitting a pure white light. A strange rhythm of life was suddenly produced at this moment. The next moment each of them took up a hole. Yidi was the first. Shaosei was the second. The big clans were arranged according to the order of the tribulation, all the way to the 8th. The supreme martial artist of the law enforcement officers took up the position. Everyone's expressions were stern as they sent the heaven-nourishing jade in their hands into the hole at the same time. At this moment, the heaven-nourishing jade actually emitted a life force that made one's soul tremble. Then it disappeared. However, all the supreme martial artists could clearly feel their hearts softening and trembling violently. Then each of them went up at the same time, using the position of their hearts to block the hole in front of them. At this moment all the cultivation in their bodies gushed out violently. White light surrounded the Dharma Supreme as he stood in the center. Streaks of holy white light were emitted from his body, and then streaks of white light were sent back into his body. Throughout this process the Dharma Supreme kept his eyes closed. However, every strand of his hair was already standing straight, each strand emitting a faint black aura. The next moment, the hole in the sky gradually dimmed, the entrance of the cave seemed to be slowly shrinking back. Then, with a thunderous rumble, both holes disappeared at the same time. All the supreme martial artists vomited blood at the same time and fell from the sky. There was a flash of colorful light in the sky, and then it disappeared without a trace. The Dharma Supreme slowly opened his eyes, a black light flashing in his eyes. An uncontrollable smile appeared at the corners of his mouth as he slowly descended. At the same time, both supreme martial artists felt that something seemed to be missing after this incident. However, upon closer inspection, they realized that nothing was missing. It was just that his internal organs had been severely shaken. "Thank you for your hard work." The Dharma Supreme floated down to the ground. With his hands behind his back, he smiled and said, "Everyone must have been shaken up. The injuries this time are not considered light. Everyone do not treat it lightly. Quickly circulate your energy and recover. There is still a crucial battle tomorrow." As he spoke, he took out a pill and distributed it to everyone. After helping Jizun consume the medicine, he immediately felt a warmth in his heart, and his entire body felt much more comfortable. Under the circulation of his origin energy, he felt that his cultivation had completely recovered in a short period of time. Everyone could not help but feel puzzled. Because the Dharma Supreme had said that the injury this time was not considered light. Since it wasn't light, how could it be healed so easily? The Dharma Supreme sighed. "Everyone will not be able to detect it yet. However, I would like to remind everyone that when I nourished the heavens earlier, it wasn't just the heaven-nourishing jade or your cultivation. I had also extracted a portion of your life force origin energy." He sighed deeply and exhaled deeply. He clasped his hands behind his back and said with a heavy voice, "Brothers, for the heavenly layer, for the 10,000 years of inheritance of the family, the life essence that you have lost this time may not be recovered. Perhaps it will take a long time to recover. Do you regret it?" They looked at each other and smiled. "I see. It's just a little bit of life force origin energy. Everyone has lived for so long. What's the big deal about losing a little bit of life force origin energy? Moreover, if this action can bring about the destruction of the tribulation and allow our family clans to prosper for another 10,000 years, what's the big deal even if we die?" The Dharma Supreme was touched. "Good brothers." With a wave of his hand, all the experts on guard hurried over. "Escort all the brothers back. Everyone, please take care of yourselves in the battle tomorrow." The Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens had come to an end. However, the Dharma Supreme paced back and forth at the same spot for a long time, as if he was reminiscing and feeling melancholy. His expression was dark and his brows were tightly knitted. Heavy snow fell. The Dharma Supreme's figure walked back and forth in the heavy snow. No one dared to disturb him. They knew that the Dharma Supreme was feeling gratified for the people and the safety of the world at this moment, but also, feeling melancholy. Therefore, everyone only quietly stood guard at a distance, silently protecting him. In the heavy snow, the Dharma Supreme followed the traces of nourishing the heavens and actually walked for 4 hours. If one was observant, one would be able to calculate that the Dharma Supreme had walked around the circle of nourishing the heavens for a total of 100 rounds. Then the Dharma Supreme took a deep breath. His face was as white as snow. The next moment, with a puff, he spat out a long stream of black gas. At the same time, thick black smoke came out of his 7 orifices. With a cough, a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out onto the snowy ground. The Dharma Supreme panted for a while and used the back of his hand to gently wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He muttered, "Dongfang Bidao, you are really stubborn. However, you have still been completely erased by me today." Suddenly he laughed strangely and said, "All in all, the life force origin energy of 81 supreme martial artists. It's about time." With a turn of his body, he disappeared without a trace. Until an hour after he disappeared, there was still black gas lingering around here and it slowly dissipated. Until 3 days after he disappeared, that mouthful of blood was still in the snowy ground, brightly colored. The heavy snow actually couldn't cover it. Dawn. The sky was still dark. Well, strictly speaking, it was still the middle of the night. Chu Yang used his divine senses and felt as if someone had moved in the courtyard. Then it disappeared. A wry smile appeared at the corner of Chu Yang's mouth. Bu Luqing and Moon Breeze had already left. After all, they were experts. If they went in advance, they could at least get a feel of the terrain. They could also give the other party a feeling of, "I have nothing to fear, I am very confident in myself." When he returned last night, Chu Yang had already told Buluqing and Moon Breeze not to kill those with the word 5 on their clothes. At the crucial moment, they could break out of the encirclement in the direction of these few people. In the end, the three of them burst out laughing. Break out of the encirclement? With such a deep blood feud, were they going to give up just like that? This made Chu Yang extremely speechless. Deep blood feud. But Moon Breeze had already tolerated it for 10,000 years. Even if the truth couldn't be found out for 10,000 years, didn't they still come through? If the Dharma Supreme didn't say anything, wouldn't they be kept in the dark for a lifetime? But why did the Dharma Supreme say it? Wasn't it to kill them? The feud had already lasted for 10,000 years. Couldn't it be done slowly? There was also Buluqing. Even if Ning Qinya was dead and you wanted to avenge him, did it have to be today? With your cultivation, you could appear and disappear mysteriously to kill the enemy. Couldn't you? But Chu Yang also knew that rather than calling today's battle revenge, it was better to say that he was going to vent his pent-up resentment. If he didn't vent this resentment, no one would feel comfortable. But, if he wanted to vent this resentment, he might have to pay the price with his life. A timid knock came from the door. Chu Yang opened the door and saw Imo Qingwu hugging the blanket, standing at the door, somewhat cowering. "I'm scared." Chu Yang felt pity for her and hurriedly pulled her in. "What's wrong?" "Teacher left just now and told me to take good care of myself. The more I thought about it, the more scared I got. I couldn't sleep." Imo Qingwu said tearfully, "So I came to look for you. But I slept very late last night. I'm so sleepy." Chu Yang stretched his neck. Can I sleep here?" Imo Qingwu looked at him pitifully. "Chu Yang, I'm so scared." Chu Yang's eyes widened. Sleep here?" Looking at the little girl's somewhat curvy figure, young Master Chu swallowed and felt his throat dry up. His lower body also felt like it was going to rise up. He hurriedly clamped his legs together and laughed dryly. "Qingwu, you're still young now. You should know that there are differences between men and women. This, sharing a bed it's precisely because I'm still young that I'm not scared." Imo Qingwu looked at Chu Yang with her round black eyes and giggled. "Brother Chu Yang wouldn't be so beastly, right? Even a little girl like me would want to harm you?" Chu Yang was stunned. This little girl, where did she learn to say such words? On the other side, Imo Qingwu had already happily hugged the blanket to the side of the bed. She moved Chu Yang's blanket inwards and placed her own fragrant blanket on the bed. Then she took off her coat. It turned out that she was only wearing a pair of pajamas underneath. "It's so cold." The little girl shivered and dived into the blanket like a fish. She didn't forget to take out her long hair from the blanket and spread it on one side of the pillow. She tilted her head and said, "Chu Yang, aren't you going to sleep?" I'll sleep, sleep." Chu Yang bent his body and clamped his legs together. With a thud, he clumsily climbed onto the bed. He only felt that he was going to catch fire. "Your posture is so weird," the little girl said. "Aha! Weird?" Minister Chu hurriedly wrapped himself tightly in the blanket and heaved a sigh of relief. He only felt that his lower body was as hard as steel and was extremely high-spirited. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. "Little girl, aren't you tormenting me? Weird posture, isn't it all because of you?" The next moment his cheeks itched. The little girl came over and put her red lips next to his ear. She said, "Brother Chu Yang." This call was unexpectedly delicate and soft. Chu Yang heard it and shivered all over. He muttered, "Demon?" The next moment the little girl put her head on Chu Yang's pillow. She reached out and grabbed Chu Yang's arm. She stuffed it under her head and then hugged Chu Yang's arm with both hands. She said with infinite happiness, "I'm not afraid now." "You're not afraid, but I'm afraid." Chu Yang's heart was somewhat powerless. "Chu Yang, do you think my master will win?" Since she was no longer afraid, the little girl began to ask the question she was most concerned about. "He will definitely win." Chu Yang looked straight at the ceiling. His body was as straight as a zombie as he muttered unconsciously. "Really?" The little girl became excited. She raised her head and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Chapter 1109. "Your teacher is the number one in the world." Chu Yang murmured. "Yes, number one in the world." It seemed as if these 4 words had given the little girl unlimited confidence. She immediately felt relieved and lay back down. It was unknown what she had thought of, but she giggled twice. Then she turned over and faced Chu Yang. "Chu Yang, what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking of doing you on the spot." Chu Yang roared in his heart, but he said aggrievedly, "Nothing, nothing." "But your face is so red." The little girl put her hand on Chu Yang's forehead. "Your head is so hot. Is it a fever?" I'm feverish, my whole body is feverish. Chu Yang murmured in his heart, but he begged for mercy. Jianghu, go to sleep. There may be a battle tomorrow. Jianghu nodded and stretched. Suddenly, her eyes turned as if she thought of something. She leaned close to Chu Yang's ear and asked in a low voice, Chu Yang, do you like women with big breasts? Jianghu's mouth was right next to Chu Yang's ear. Her warm breath blew into his ear. Her breath smelled like orchids. Chu Yang only felt itchy and soft. He almost passed out on the spot. He moaned, little girl, don't ask such an impure question. Jianghu snorted. Her eyes turned and she suddenly lifted her blanket. The next moment she lifted Chu Yang's blanket and giggled. Before Chu Yang could react, she had already burrowed into Chu Yang's blanket. Chu Yang's whole body stiffened. His neck felt cold. The little girl's tender arms had already wrapped around him. She giggled and said, Chu Yang? Hugging you to sleep is the most comfortable. As she said, she rested her head on Chu Yang's chest. Chu Yang grimaced. He quietly moved his body and clamped her with his legs. His breathing became more and more rapid. You're disobedient. Hurry up and sleep. You want to sleep now? Jianghu giggled. She pouted and kissed Chu Yang's mouth with her rosy lips. Sleep. She closed her eyes. Chu Yang really felt like he was going to die. He was suffocating. He was going to explode. Your body is getting hotter and hotter, Jianghu murmured. Chu Yang felt a weight on his body. The little girl pressed her thighs against his and hugged his neck with both hands. Her head rested on his shoulders, and her thighs pressed heavily against his stomach. She proudly murmured a few words, and then her breathing became light. He was actually about to fall asleep. Chu Yang felt that his whole body was on fire. Seeing that he was about to be burned by the raging flames, he hurriedly recited the tranquil heart technique. He kept thinking about it. However, he was getting more and more upset. His body was sticky and sweaty. Seeing that the little girl seemed to have fallen asleep, Chu Yang slowly loosened his legs. With a conflicted expression, he was completely speechless. How was he going to spend the night? What the hell? Jianghu frowned and mumbled in dissatisfaction. With his eyes closed, he reached down, grabbed something and pulled it to the side. Hiss. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of air. He barely managed to turn his body sideways to avoid the sharp edge. Chu Yang himself didn't know how he had managed to get through this night. He counted with his eyes wide open. After counting for 2 hours, his mind slowly calmed down. Then he felt a wave of happiness, peace and comfort. The person he loved was in his arms. All of his regrets had been made up for. At this point in life, what more could he ask for? Chu Yang sighed blissfully. At this moment, Jianghu in his arms frowned. There was a pained and confused expression on her face. Her body twisted. As if she was about to wake up, but she didn't. She seemed to be dreaming. Chu Yang hugged her gently and tenderly. The person in his arms calmed down. Chu Yang was about to fall asleep in a daze when he suddenly felt something wet on his chest. At a glance, he saw Jianghu's eyes. She was crying non-stop, but she obviously hadn't woken up yet. I'm dreaming again? Chu Yang sighed. Suddenly his heart trembled. Dreaming again? What kind of dream was she having? Could it be? He saw Jianghu's mouth open slightly. She gasped for breath and said, Don't let me leave. Chu Yang held his breath. However, after Jianghu said this, she didn't speak for a long time. She just kept crying. After a long time, Chu Yang was a little confused. He was about to close his eyes when suddenly, his chest tightened. Jianghu's little hand grabbed his collar tightly. She closed her eyes and cried. Her little hand was so tight that her knuckles turned white, but she refused to let go. Only her tears kept flowing. Chu Yang sighed. Just as he was about to embrace her completely in his arms, Jianghu suddenly exerted more force in his embrace. She grabbed his lapel and said intermittently, Chu Yang, if there's a next life, you take another look at me. I'm prettier than a sword. Chu Yang's whole body shook. He was dumbfounded. His eyes widened abruptly, but there was no light in his eyes. Only tears flowed quietly. Jianghu, have you finally achieved this dream of yours? I'm prettier than a sword. I'm prettier than a sword. Chu Yang's heart began to ache as if it was overturning rivers and seas. Mount Xingyun. This was said to be the place where the stars fell. It was said that when the Almighty was folding the heavens, his movements were a little too big, causing the surrounding stars to fall down neatly. After burning the air, they fell to the sky above the heavens continent. Seeing that the newly folded heavens continent was about to be destroyed, the Almighty was very unhappy. So he waved his hand and collected all these fallen stars. He crumpled them into a ball and threw it on the heavens continent. After this piece was thrown down, it became a mountain range made up entirely of meteorites. The entire mountain range was a single entity. It couldn't be separated at all. And the texture was hard. No divine weapon could separate even a piece of rock the size of a fingernail from Mount Xingyun. Moreover, it was said that this mountain had the power of the stars and was full of mysteries. The reason why the Zhuge clan chose to build a city here was because of the unlimited mysterious power of Mount Xingyun. And the great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was drawn on Mount Xingyun. Then, it activated the secrets of heaven and drew the power of the stars to complete this array. To a certain extent, this great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was a product of heaven and earth. Moreover, ever since the formation of this array, the Zhuge clan had never succeeded in building another similar array. Could also be said to be the only array in the world. When Bu Luqing and the Moon Breeze couple set foot on this mountain, the night was hazy. Heavy snow fell. The three of them walked up the mountain step by step, admiring the scenery along the way. I heard that this mountain is the #1 mystical object in the heavens. Yu Lingxue smiled and said, I've been here several times. Even with my cultivation, I can't dig out the rocks on this mountain. It's really hard. Bu Luqing rolled his eyes. He pointed to the mountain. He said, there's only one thing that I'm curious about now. How did these trees grow in such a hard place? The Moon Breeze couple smiled bitterly in unison. This matter was really inexplicable. Bu Luqing walked to the front of a tree and smiled lightly. He reached out his palm and with a snap, this small tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl was cut in half. Looking closer, they saw densely packed tree rings at the cut. It was impossible to count them all. They were completely connected. This is an ordinary tree that has grown here for at least 10,000 years. And it's only as thick as the mouth of a bowl. But its weight is comparable to star iron. Bu Luqing weighed the tree in his palm and said lightly, if it's made into a stick for someone, can really smash a martial saint to death. He pondered and said, an ordinary tree just because it grew in a different environment, can cause such an outcome. If it's a human, what will happen? The Moon Breeze couple was also deep in thought. Bu Luqing waved his hand and the accumulated snow on the ground was pushed away, revealing the dark stone ground. The pine tree's roots grew in a thin crack, flat and flat. Bu Luqing bent down, dug his finger into this crack and pulled forcefully. The crack didn't move at all. Bu Luqing's finger made a cracking sound. Bu Luqing retracted his hand and stood up. He said somewhat awkwardly, did you see that? Mount Xingyun, even with my cultivation. I can't move a single rock. Cough cough. Feng Yuro laughed instantly. Yu Lingxue also couldn't help but laugh. He said, Brother Bu, what I saw was, although this mountain is hard and we can't move it, the soft tree roots can take root in it and grow into a towering tree. So, no matter how meticulous a plan is, there will still be loopholes. Bu Luqing perked up and said, you're right, I wanted to say this just now but my finger hurt and I forgot. Feng Yuro finally laughed, not caring about her image. The three of them laughed together. When they came, they were still a little nervous, but in this laughter, it disappeared without a trace. The three of them, one in front and two behind, walked leisurely towards the peak of the mountain. The Dharma Supreme stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. Hearing the laughter coming from the foot of the mountain, a strange smile appeared on his face. How carefree to still be able to laugh at a time like this. At the side, Wu Jueqing sat on a piece of pitch-black rock and said indifferently, they won't be able to laugh soon. The Dharma Supreme laughed and suddenly let out a long whistle, shouting softly, Brother Yu, are you here? Yu Lingshua's voice came from the mountainside. Bah! Dharma Supreme, what right do you have to call me brother? The Dharma Supreme laughed and said, Brother Yu, more than 10,000 years in exchange for such treatment, it really makes one's heart cold. Even if you insist on supporting the Tribulation Sword Master, you don't have to be so ruthless, right? Yu Lingxue was furious. He was about to speak when a cold voice came from above. Bu Luqing, get up here and accept your death. Bu Luqing flew into a rage and shouted, Wu Jueqing, you despicable person. Why, are you still thinking of using your ancestors' prestige to bully others? Let me tell you, I won't fall for it. The pitiful supreme martial artist Chen Feng is going to die today. Wu Jueqing's cold voice came down. Bu Luqing, you can't kill anyone with just your mouth. Bu Luqing laughed. I can't kill anyone, but I can disgust you. I'm happy to disgust you. Waha, to disgust the descendants of Chen Feng and Lu Yun, it really feels good. Wu Jueqing, who was above, didn't say anything, but a substantial murderous aura gradually condensed and came sweeping towards them. Today is the deputy moderator's Tian's birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. However, everyone calls her Dao Dao and some call her Air Dao or Jing Dao Fart Dao. In short, there are many deputy moderators' names, so I won't list them all here. In short, I wish her a happy birthday. Every year there will be a day like this. Brother Ao, sure, I'll be happy with you. Brother, happy birthday. G. Chapter 11:10. Wu Jueqing's voice was as cold as ice. Come up, let's fight. Bu Luqing snorted and said, come down, I'll fight you. There was silence from above again. Bu Luqing might be straightforward, but he was definitely not stupid. There was obviously a trap and a conspiracy in today's situation. It was one thing for him to come here for Ning Tianya's safety, but it definitely didn't mean that he would foolishly step into the enemy's trap. You go up or I go up. Go up and be tricked by you? I want you to come down. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, you don't dare to come up? Bu Luqing crossed his arms and stood at the waist of the mountain. He said arrogantly, do I have to go up just because you ask me to? Who do you think you are? Why, you don't dare to come down. Wu Jueqing laughed. Don't you want to know about Ning Tianya's news? Bu Luqing laughed. If old Ning is dead, he will be dead even if I go up. If old Ning is still alive, he will still be alive even if I don't go up. Wu Jueqing, I have only one motive for coming here today, and that is to kill you. Wu Jueqing laughed coldly. The two parties, one at the top and one at the waist of the mountain, were actually in a stalemate. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. The famous Bu Luqing, the #1 sword supremacy in the world, actually doesn't dare to go up the mountain. Doesn't dare to face the enemy's challenge. And the Moon Breeze couple who dominated the upper three heavens together actually cowered in the face of the enemy who killed their master. Ah, what a joke, what a joke. Yu Lingshua's expression changed. Bu Luqing stopped him with his gaze and laughed loudly. One of the famous tribulations, the descendant of two legendary figures in the heavens, not only is he despicable, he actually doesn't dare to come down the mountain for a battle. Does he not have any other abilities other than using the name of his ancestors to scare people? Having lived for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good-for-nothing? No wonder he was used by others for a lifetime, almost becoming mud used to mend the heavens. Of course, the most praiseworthy is still the Dharma Supreme. The Dharma Supreme of a generation actually started to be sarcastic, using insults to provoke others. Do you have any other ideas? Bu Luqing mocked him with sarcasm. A long howl from the top. Having lived for tens of thousands of years, he was still a good-for-nothing? No wonder he had been used by others for an entire lifetime and had almost become the mud used to mend the heavens. These words had really poked at Wu Jueqing's sore spot. He couldn't hold himself back any longer. With a long roar, his white robe fluttered. His sleeves fluttered. With a loud boom, all the snow on the mountain flew into the air. At the same time, his thin white figure was like a bolt of lightning. It shot down from the top of the mountain. Bu Luqing laughed heartily. You really don't have any self-restraint. You came down on your own just because I provoked you. I looked down on you. Although he said that he was looking down on Bu Luqing, he had already drawn his sword. With the roar of a dragon and a tiger, 10,000 rays of sword light wrapped around Bu Luqing's body and charged toward Wu Jueqing. With this charge, the flashing sword light was like millions of people unsheathing their swords at the same time. The entire Mount Xingyun. The sound of swords rang out in unison, clang. Bu Luqing was furious. Wu Jueqing. Who do you think you are? To think that so many supreme martial artists would be sent out to ambush them for a decisive battle. What a disgrace to our ancestors. Wu Jueqing's face and ears turned red. That sword chime just now was the sound of the sword supremacy being unsheathed and all the swords in the world bowing to it. Wu Jueqing and the Dharma Supreme had thought of countless possibilities, but they had forgotten about this. This had to be the will of the heavens. If the battle had already begun and was in full swing, so many people would come out and besiege them at once. Even if Bu Luqing scolded, he wouldn't have made Wu Jueqing feel so uncomfortable. Because at that time, everyone would be in the middle of a battle and be in mortal danger at any time. Who would have the time to think about what it meant? As for after the battle, the winner would be the king and the loser would be the thief. That was even less of a problem. But that was the problem. The battle had yet to begin and both sides had yet to warm up. The other side's sword had already caused the swords of hundreds of people on their side to chime at the same time. This was like a hard slap to Wu Jueqing's face. It was so painful that it was unbearable. Yu Lingxue laughed loudly. To think that the two elders, Qin Feng and Lu Yun, were such great heroes back then. Who would have thought that their descendants would actually be such characters? It really makes one sigh for all eternity. Anger rose in Wu Jueqing's heart. His face flushed red. He chuckled. Then sigh while you still can. Suddenly he raised his hands. Both his hands flew in the air. Instantly, the whole area within a radius of several hundred miles was filled with colorless and odorless poisonous gas. Then his white robe fluttered and he pounced on Bu Luqing. Bu Luqing's sword shook. Suddenly, a mountain appeared out of thin air. A sword mountain. It came crashing down on Wu Jueqing crazily. But when Bu Luqing made this move, Wu Jueqing instantly knew that he had been deceived by Ning Tianya that day. Because this attack of Bu Luqing's was not inferior to Ning Tianya's most powerful attack that day. That despicable Ning Tianya. Wu Jueqing cursed in his heart. If not for the fact that he had such a miraculous item like the sword intent, which greatly exceeded Ning Tianya's expectations, he might really have been tricked by Ning Tianya and used to deal with them. The sword aura emitted by Bu Luqing's sword made even Wu Jueqing a little shocked. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be revealed. Wu Jueqing's wrist shook in the air. A long black whip suddenly appeared in the air. With a shake of the whip, it shattered the thousands of snowflakes in the air along with Bu Luqing's sword mountain. Sword light shot out. Bu Luqing swung his sword. It was as if he had split the sky and the earth apart. He laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing, this move shall be called Morning Wind Slash. What do you think? Actually, this move naturally had another name. But Bu Luqing said it deliberately to provoke Wu Jueqing. Arrogant. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly. He lashed out with his whip. The whip shadows formed many small circles in the air, surrounding Bu Luqing's sword light. The long whip coiled and intertwined with the long sword. The two of them suddenly changed from a long-distance attack to a close combat battle. With a bang, Bu Luqing struck with his left palm and Wu Jueqing with his right palm. Boom. The snow on the ground flew up. Bu Luqing's sword shook and he flew into the air. Wu Jueqing followed closely behind, his long whip coiling wildly. You are indeed a poison doctor. Even your attacks are poisonous. Bu Luqing swung his left hand. Don't put on an act in front of me. With your cultivation, before your protective internal energy is broken, this bit of poison won't be able to do anything to you. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly. His attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Bu Luqing laughed loudly. Descendant of morning wind. You are indeed as smart as a child prodigy. Wu Jueqing shut his mouth and stopped talking nonsense with him. He could tell that this sword supremacy looked cold and ruthless, but the moment he opened his mouth, it was a huge fucking shit pit. Bickering with him was simply infuriating. Bu Luqing attacked the enemy relentlessly with his words, but he had a plan in mind. As he fought, he observed the surrounding terrain at the same time. He wanted to see where he could set up an ambush. He could strike at any time and kill a few people to warm up his hands. The more people he killed, the less an ambush it would be. But he looked around. But he didn't find anything. If it wasn't for the sword chime that told him that there were too many enemies here, he might have thought that there was no one here. Where did they hide? Bu Luqing's thoughts flashed, but his long sword didn't relax. He exchanged blow after blow with Wu Jueqing. In terms of cultivation, Bu Luqing was undoubtedly much inferior to Wu Jueqing. But at this moment he was actually not at a disadvantage. From the start of the battle until now, the two of them had been fighting in the air 100 feet high. They didn't go down. If they went up, it would be Bu Luqing who listened to Wu Jueqing and went up. But if they went down, it would be Wu Jueqing who was at a disadvantage. Therefore, the two of them fought at a height that was neither too high nor too low. Bu Luqing laughed and flicked his long sword, making a sound like a dragon's roar. He mocked, the descendant of morning wind is nothing more than this. The tribulation of tens of thousands of years is nothing more than this. Wu Jueqing was instantly fuming. It was because he intercepted Ning Tianya that day. Ning Tianya also said the same thing. And not only did he say the same thing, even his tone was the same. How could Wu Jueqing not be angry? It meant that these two fellows didn't care about morning wind at all. Otherwise they wouldn't have said the same thing. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly saw Bu Luqing retreat abruptly. Then, with a roll, the sword light trembled and suddenly turned into a bright rainbow. The sword light was round like a barrel, several feet thick, but its length seemed to be endless. Bu Luqing's whole body was hidden in the sword light, and he flew over like a rainbow. Man and sword as one. Wu Jueqing snorted. His long whip danced in the air and shook. With a loud bang, a black epiphyllum suddenly appeared. Wu Jueqing shouted and pushed with both hands. This black epiphyllum met Bu Luqing's man and sword as one. Then the long whip shook and the black epiphyllum flew out one by one. Epiphyllum pistol. This was obviously an ultimate sword technique, but it was used by Wu Jueqing with a whip of a completely different nature. And its power didn't decrease but increased. Bu Luqing laughed coldly. Epiphyllum pistol can't stop the sword's supremacy. Just like that, the epiphyllum broke under his sword one after another. Wu Jueqing waved his whip and used it as a sword. He also used the man and sword as one and rushed forward. Sword supremacy? You're not worthy. The two of them collided with a loud bang. Wu Jueqing did a roll and somersaulted 17 to 18 times in the air, reaching a height of 400 to 500 feet. Bu Luqing, on the other hand, floated out at a slanted angle. His green robes left a white mark in the wind and moon. Wu Jueqing snorted and was about to use his sword intent. He purposely used a battle method that he wasn't good at to fight Bu Luqing just for this moment. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly felt the wind behind him and a murderous aura. Startled, he hurriedly dashed out. With a thud, Wu Jueqing's shoulder was hit by a sword. His white robes were torn and fresh blood could be seen. He was hit on his calf and fresh blood dripped out. He hurriedly circulated his energy to stop it, but his face was already full of anger and astonishment. Sword light flashed and the Moon Breeze couple attacked at the same time, attacking Wu Jueqing with their dual swords. Just now, it was actually the husband and wife who joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Be it Wu Jueqing or the Dharma Supreme, even Bu Luqing, they were all greatly surprised by this. No one would have thought that the Moon Breeze couple, who had always been known for their gentlemanly demeanor, would actually launch a sneak attack. Yu Lingshua's expression was calm. Only you guys are allowed to set up despicable traps, but I'm not allowed to launch a sneak attack? What kind of logic is this? 10 chapters. If you can imagine what I look like now, I'll call you brothers. 7 packs of cigarettes and a box and a half of Red Bull in 2 days and 2 nights? But 10 chapters. Got it. Begging for votes. Chapter 11:11. Wu Jueqing was rather exasperated. Unexpectedly, he was hit by 2 swords. Fortunately, he dodged quickly. Otherwise, these 2 swords would have split him into 4 pieces. At this moment, his left shoulder was throbbing with pain, and the veins on his right calf seemed to have been injured. Was him. If it had been anyone else, the 2 slashes to the shoulder and calf would have been enough to take their life. Because of the explosive power attached to the sword qi, no matter where it pierced, a person would be blown to pieces on the spot. Damn it. Wu Jueqing was rather disheveled. Because the Moon Breeze couple had taken the initiative and were hunting him down. He had just exchanged a blow with Bu Luqing and now he was ambushed. Unable to recover his breath, he could only dodge continuously. Moon Breeze's swords were like rainbows as they intensified their attacks. For a time, this one of the tribulations from 40,000 years ago was forced into a difficult situation. Actually, Wu Jueqing didn't even need to take these 2 slashes. However, he believed from the bottom of his heart that a ruler like the Moon Breeze couple would definitely not launch a sneak attack. That was why he wasn't prepared at all. The image of the Moon Breeze couple and their upright style had always been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even those who hated them the most couldn't help but admit that Moon Breeze was open and aboveboard. They would never do something like using titles as a scheme. But now, the Moon Breeze couple's sneak attack had a miraculous effect. The Dharma Supreme had been keeping watch all this while, originally preparing to launch a sneak attack. Who would have thought that before he could even make a move, the Moon Breeze couple had already started their sneak attack? At this moment he was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. Suddenly he laughed wildly. Who would have thought, brother Yu, such a virtuous couple would actually launch a sneak attack in battle? Yu Lingshua sneered and said indifferently, Dharma Supreme, which master of yours taught you that? My lord would not know how to launch a sneak attack. Feng Yuro said mockingly, Dharma Supreme, you have already ambushed several hundred supreme martial artists here to plot against us, yet you still want us to have a duel with you? What a joke. The Dharma Supreme's face turned red, not out of embarrassment. It was because of anger. He let out a long laugh and shouted, since that's the case, I'll join in the fun too. He leaped up and flew towards the Moon Breeze couple. At this moment, Bu Luqing had already flown over on his sword, heading straight for Wu Jueqing. Moon Breeze struck 3 times consecutively, forcing Wu Jueqing into a corner. Then they retreated at the same time to face the Dharma Supreme. The 5 of them engaged in a fierce battle. But the location of the final battle was still very far away from the nebulous sky-splitting array of heavenly secrets. The Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing, however, were not very anxious. There was no point in being anxious. There was still time. Moon Breeze, on the other hand, was really fighting with bloodshot eyes. His beloved teacher had been killed. After being wronged for more than 10,000 years, the truth was finally revealed. And this murderer had actually called him brother for more than 10,000 years. This matter. The moment the Moon Breeze couple thought about it, their chests were about to explode from anger. The Dharma Supreme was still teasing them. Brother, I was also forced to do what I did back then. The Dharma Supreme walked through the sword light with ease, his black robes fluttering in the wind. His voice was even more nonchalant as he said, "Say, your teacher was already so old back then. Even if I don't kill him, he won't live for long, right? Moreover, he occupies the position of the Dharma Supreme. If I don't kill him, how am I going to sit there? I also have my own difficulties. I had no choice." Yu Lingshua's face turned more and more green, the fury in his eyes more and more exuberant. The husband and wife bit their lips tightly, not saying a word as they madly attacked. They couldn't wait to blast this bastard into smithereens with one sword. The sword light was like rain and waterfall, shooting everywhere in the heavy snow. The Dharma Supreme sighed repeatedly, trying his best to incite the duo's anger with his words. Both of them knew that he was trying to provoke them. However, the anger in their hearts was getting stronger and stronger uncontrollably. However, as the battle progressed, both of them also discovered to their surprise that the Dharma Supreme's cultivation was much higher than what they had originally thought. The three of them had been law enforcement officers for more than 10,000 years. Naturally, they often sparred with each other. In the Moon Breeze couple's impression, the Dharma Supreme's cultivation was definitely higher than theirs. If Yu Lingxue were to fight the Dharma Supreme alone, he would definitely not be his match. However, if the husband and wife were to join forces, the Dharma Supreme would not be able to retaliate at all. The Moon Breeze couple was invincible. This was what the Dharma Supreme had said himself. Therefore, the Moon Breeze couple was also full of confidence that if the Dharma Supreme really dared to fight them to the death, he would definitely not gain any advantage. However, they did not expect that in today's battle, the Dharma Supreme would still be able to deal with it calmly even when the husband and wife had already given their all. Although it could not be said to be an understatement, it was still more than enough. What a Dharma Supreme, to have actually hidden his true strength for so many years. Yu Lingxue gritted his teeth. Feng Yuro also looked embarrassed and angry. Looking at it this way, weren't the both of them taken for fools and deceived for so many years? The Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. If I wasn't strong enough, how could I have killed your teacher? Yu Lingxue was instantly enraged. On the other side, the battle between Bu Luqing and Wu Jueqing had also reached its climax. Bu Luqing came and went on his sword, going back and forth like the wind. He actually felt infinitely carefree as he fought. Wu Jueqing, Dharma Supreme. You have so many experts lying in ambush. What are you waiting for if you don't come out for a battle? Bu Luqing's sword was like a rainbow, his aura majestic as he laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing's heart skipped a beat. He raised his voice and shouted, "Those above, immediately chop off one of Ning Tianya's arms and throw it down. Since Supreme Martial Artist Bu doesn't believe me, then let him see a token first." Before he finished his sentence, Bu Luqing shouted, "Fuck you! How dare you!" Sword light flashed, and with a thunderous sound, the snowflakes within a radius of dozens of miles were uniformly shattered. Bu Luqing had already rushed to the top of the mountain like a shooting star. The Moon Breeze couple was afraid that Bu Luqing would lose, but also worried that Ning Tianya would really be captured, so they also rushed up. The Dharma Supreme said angrily, "You want to help Bu Luqing? Not so easy." With a wave of his sleeves, he blocked the two of them. The battle became even more intense. However, the two of them were worried that Bu Luqing would go up alone. How could they be willing to fight with him? Both of them exerted all their strength, almost rushing up with all their might. The Dharma Supreme blocked repeatedly, his body swaying. Finally, his face turned pale and he said hatefully, "Even if you go up, what can you do? You're just courting death." The Moon Breeze couple ignored him. They turned into two streaks of sword light and chased up to the top of the mountain at lightning speed. The Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing looked at each other and smiled. The original plan was finally halfway to success. The three of them had already reached the top of the mountain. Next, there was only that Zi Sheqing left. The two of them followed in a flash. At the top of the mountain, Bu Luqing stood on a protruding rock. He looked around but actually didn't find a single person. His divine perception also didn't find anything. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. The Moon Breeze couple rushed up and asked, "Brother Bu, did you find anything?" "It's very strange." Bu Luqing frowned. "This place blocks the aura and divine perception. There's no way to detect where anyone is hiding. Could it be the power of this Mount Xingyun? Yu Lingxue said, not necessarily. No matter how magical Mount Xingyun is, it's just a mountain. It can't have this kind of effect. Legend has it that the Zhuge clan has a mysterious array with infinite power. In my opinion, it should be the power of an array. Array? Bu Luqing stood with his sword. Suddenly, with a long howl, the sword flew out of his hand. It spun in the air and then turned into thousands of streaks of light, falling from the sky and enveloping the entire mountain. Bu Luqing was confident that under such an attack, in an instant, every inch of the entire Mount Xingyun would be plowed by the sword light. If someone was hiding, even if he couldn't see it with the naked eye, he couldn't possibly turn his body into air. However, after this move landed, only a series of clanging sounds could be heard. There was actually nothing. Bu Luqing leaped up and caught the sword in his hand. With a serious expression he said, Moon Breeze couple. The three of us will be each other's horns. Once an enemy appears we will go all out to kill them. Don't split up. This place is very strange so we can't let the enemy take advantage of us. The Moon Breeze couple nodded. Bu Luqing's words were out of consideration for the two of them. With a flash, the Dharma Supreme appeared in front of them, his white robes fluttering. Wu Jueqing was also already standing on the highest rock, smiling disdainfully. Bu Luqing, it's time for you to die. Bu Luqing laughed mockingly. This is what supreme martial artist Qin Feng taught you? Sneak attacks, making use of arrays, bullying with numbers, these are supreme martial artist Qin Feng's teachings? This old man has really learned a lot. Wu Jueqing snorted and said, for deaths and you're still speaking so rudely. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme in front of them suddenly chuckled and said, we're about to part in life and death. From now on, the road to the Yellow Springs is long and dark. Take care of yourselves. Suddenly he stomped his foot. Under his feet, a black rock slowly sank. The Dharma Supreme laughed and sank into the ground along with the rock. The three of you on the road to the Yellow Springs, the three of you won't be lonely. I'm relieved. Yu Lingxue stabbed with his sword. The Dharma Supreme had already sunk and the ground returned to its original state. The sword stabbed into the black rock, emitting a flash of fire. Immediately, a voice said, changes in the heavens, movement of the stars and clouds, splitting the heavens, shaking the earth, slaying the Tao. With a swoosh, the whole world suddenly turned pitch black. Immediately, a faint light flashed and the stars in the sky twinkled, densely packed. It was already early in the morning and the sky was just beginning to brighten. However, at this moment, it suddenly returned to darkness. The whole Mount Xingyun suddenly seemed to be spinning. The surrounding darkness also followed suit. Bu Luqing, Feng and you were shocked at the same time. This was because the three of them could clearly feel that this rotation was real. It was definitely not an illusion. The rotation of heaven and earth became faster and faster. Immediately, shadows and human figures appeared. From all directions there were human figures rushing in. As the whole mountain rotated, the direction they were rushing in also seemed to be constantly changing. The big clans and the experts of the law enforcement officers finally launched their attacks at this moment. Bu Luqing and the other two shouted and attacked with all their might. In the orchard palace, Chu Yang woke up early. Looking at the floating morning fog, he waited in a daze. He seemed to be deep in thought. Zi Xieqing was already sitting under the flower rack, her expression gentle and calm. How is it? Chu Yang walked over. They have already started the battle. Zi Xieqing used her divine sense to monitor the movements in Mount Xingyun and said slowly. When he woke up today, it was already 5 in the afternoon. His legs were weak and he almost couldn't stand. Damn it, Aunt Feng said, is the number 1 in the monthly votes so important? Is it worth fighting so hard? I thought for a while and said, actually the Olympic gold medal is useless in the hands of many people. If you get it, the amount of gold you have is only enough to make a bracelet. However, in the eyes of all the athletes, it is not a gold medal but the number 1 in the world. The number 1 in the monthly votes and the Olympic gold medal cannot be compared. However, my desire for it is like the desire of the athletes for the gold medal. It is the same. To those who have gotten it before, it is at most an additional badge. However, to me it represents a life goal that I have yet to achieve. So I will fight. G. Begging for monthly votes. G. Chapter 11-12. How's the battle situation? Chu Yang asked with concern. From the looks of it now, Bu Luqing and Wu Jueqing are equally matched. Wu Jueqing has yet to use his ultimate move, nor has he used any of his true trump cards. Therefore, Bu Luqing is no match for Wu Jueqing. The Moon Breeze couple is also no match for the Dharma Supreme. Zi Xieqing said, but from the looks of it, the three of them are not in danger. If they want to leave, although the other party has the upper hand, they can definitely leave. I'm afraid they won't leave. Chu Yang sighed. I'm afraid they won't leave. Zi Shiqing said lightly, at least they won't leave unless it's a critical moment. Suddenly she exclaimed and said, they're at the top of the mountain. It's a little strange. Strange? Chu Yang frowned. There's no one at the top of the mountain. Zi Shiqing frowned. Could it be a formation? Then she said seriously, they've started fighting. It's indeed a formation. Bu Luqing and the other two are in a desperate siege. Chu Yang's heart trembled. Indeed. Zi Shiqing frowned slightly. She cut off the divine sense probing over there, turned her head and smiled bitterly. Looks like I have no choice but to take action. This formation has isolated the divine sense. Even if I want to probe, I'll need to expend a lot of energy. Yes. Chu Yang's eyes revealed a complicated look. He said softly, after you take action this time, are you going to leave directly? Zi Shiqing turned her head and said lightly, there's no such thing as an eternal banquet. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. That's right. This sentence is extremely accurate. Zi Shiqing laughed and said, take care. She paused and said, take care of yourselves. She turned around and looked at the orchard palace longingly. She smiled lightly. She said desolately, hidden in the high clouds, I'll travel the world alone. If we meet again in the clouds. Suddenly she floated up, her white robe fluttering in the air. She softly added the last sentence. May you sweep away the fallen flowers in Jianghu. Her slender hands separated, and with a ripping sound, the entire space was torn apart by her. Her body paused as if she wanted to turn around to take a look. However, she didn't turn around in the end. She let out a faint sigh before her slender figure flashed into the spatial rift and vanished without a trace. A faint sigh came from the crack. Before I leave, I'll kill you until the sky turns red. There was still a faint fragrance in the wind and snow. It was Zi Shiqing's aura. Chu Yang was still sitting in front of the stone table with his head lowered. He looked at the surface of the table with rapt attention, as if there were thousands of worlds on the surface of the table. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't understand it. Finally, gone? Chu Yang's mouth was full of bitterness. He chuckled in self-mockery and muttered, we'll meet again in the clouds. Please sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Where's Jiangnan? His heart ached as he cursed under his breath. That woman left in such a carefree manner. He stood up, gritted his teeth and said indifferently, don't forget your promise. Then he floated into the snow and clapped his hands. He said, everyone come out. The great battle is coming, let me arrange the battle. This time it's a matter of life and death. Everyone must be careful. Chu Yang's voice was very calm as usual. As for Yu Yunji, he faintly felt a sort of indescribable sadness. However, he controlled himself and deeply suppressed this sadness in the bottom of his heart. The great battle was coming. How could he let his emotions get the better of him? We'll meet again. Chu Yang said to himself in his heart. On Mount Xingyun the battle was already in full swing. Bu Luqing and the other two were fighting fiercely. They didn't retreat at all, moving freely in and out of the formation. They were drenched in blood all the way. The final form of the formation hadn't been activated yet. Now it was filled with human lives. The more than 400 supreme martial artists who formed the formation didn't move. Only about 200 supreme martial artists were fighting with these three people in the formation. There was a hubbub of voices and clashing teeth. Bu Luqing and the other two were already stained with blood. However, their injuries were far less serious than they looked. It was all the enemy's blood. The Dharma Supreme and Bu Luqing sat high up and watched, their faces solemn. Bu Luqing and the other two didn't expect the other party to be so crazy. The Dharma Supreme and the other two didn't expect Bu Luqing and the other two to be so ferocious. Both parties were beyond their expectations. Seeing the number of casualties gradually increasing, Wu Jueqing frowned. Dharma Supreme, in our expectations, the cultivation of these three people shouldn't be so strong. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, now more than 30 supreme martial artists have already died in the hands of these three people. This is too different from the plan. The Dharma Supreme also frowned and said, I have sparred with the Moon Breeze couple many times. Although I have been concealing my cultivation level, the Moon Breeze couple have not. In my impression, their cultivation level is much lower than mine. But now it's obvious that they've improved a lot. Compared to me, they're only a little lower. How can this be? And Bu Liuqing's cultivation also seems to be a little higher than Ning Tianya's that day. This is really puzzling. Wu Jueqing snorted and said, Could it be that they've collectively improved in these few days? The Dharma Supreme frowned and said, with that woman around, this matter doesn't seem impossible. Wu Jueqing said decisively, absolutely impossible. At this stage, every little bit of improvement requires comprehension of the realm. Every time they comprehend a new realm, it requires years of accumulation. How can they improve to such a level in just a few days? Unless, the Dharma Supreme also thought of the same question. The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Unless they've obtained a huge amount of life force origin energy. Another scream rang out. Another third-grade supreme martial artist was kicked up by Bu Luqing. He crashed into a rock, his brains splattering everywhere. The rock was so hard that even Bu Luqing couldn't move it, much less a third-grade supreme martial artist. Although this Mount Xingyun was extremely hard and prevented Bu Luqing and the others from escaping by splitting the mountain, facing the opponent's thunderous attacks, the casualty rate on their side also increased greatly. If they crashed into a rock, they might lose their limbs and break their bodies. Bu Luqing and the other two maintained a triangular cone formation, their formation unmoving. No matter how the enemy rushed over or how they fought, the formation of the three men never changed. No matter how many brilliant plans you have. I have my own set of rules. As the fight went on, the three of them actually felt their fighting spirit soar. There was actually a very carefree feeling rising from their hearts. Bu Luqing had a sword in his right hand and a palm in his left. His legs rose and fell one after another, acting as the sword tip of the triangular cone formation. Sword light flickered and his palms slashed wildly. His feet were even more unrestrained. Relying on his profound cultivation, he didn't care how the enemy attacked. As long as he could reach it, he would kick it. Sabers and swords would be kicked too. As long as they were kicked by him, no matter what kind of saber or sword it would shatter on the spot. The enemy would spurt blood and retreat. Those who were unlucky enough to be kicked by him would lose their lives. On both sides behind him, the Moon Breeze couple's sword light flashed and flashed. Someone would definitely lose their life. Rushing over and rushing back, large batches of supreme martial artists who had already become legends in the heavens fell to the ground just like that. They turned into piles of rotten meat. Ha! Great. Bu Luqing laughed loudly. They're exhausting our strength. This is a great idea. Yu Lingxue waved his sword, a cold and stern smile on his handsome face. It's not bad. Sooner or later they will be able to exhaust us to the point where we have no energy left. However, before that, these people are not enough for us to kill. We still need to transfer some more over. Feng Yuro smiled and said, that's right. The Dharma Supreme is sending people over to be killed. I wonder what his intention is. On the mountain peak, Wu Jueqing frowned. Should we make our move in advance? The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, there's no hurry. It's not a big deal for a few people to die. However, the key is that woman. As long as these people's deaths are worth it, then it's not a big deal even if more of them die. Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed and he didn't say anything else. He admitted it. In terms of cold-heartedness, although he had lived for tens of thousands of years more, compared to the Dharma Supreme in front of him, there was still a certain gap. This fellow on the surface looked like he was benevolent and righteous, but in reality, he didn't have any humanity to speak of. The 8 super clans can't be touched. You and I can't move before that woman arrives. The Dharma Supreme frowned and said, if we really have to move, let my 2 guards do it. As he spoke, he waved his hand and said, the 2 of you go and get intimate with Moon Breeze. 2 figures appeared out of thin air with a swoosh. The next moment they were on the battlefield. The 2 of them, one with a saber and one with a sword, faced Feng Yuro at the same time. It was obvious that the 2 of them had been preparing for a long time. Moreover, they had the same target long ago. The array was dim and there were many enemies. The 2 of them suddenly attacked with all their might. Together with a 5th-grade supreme martial artist who rushed over at the same time, their attacks were like a flash flood. Caught off guard, Feng Yuro collided with 8 supreme martial artist experts at the same time. She let out a muffled groan and her face turned pale. Taking a step back, she looked up at the 2 of them and said angrily, it's you too. The 2 of them said coldly at the same time, that's right, it's us. Master Feng, today is a day of vengeance. We won't rest until one of us is dead. The friendship of the past is gone. Feng Yuro snorted. If that's the case, what's the point of talking? Then let's fight. Without another word, she rushed forward with her sword. However, with the addition of these 2, Feng Yuro's side was in imminent danger. Moreover, the surrounding supreme martial artists were able to cultivate to this level. Which one of them was a fool? Seeing the opportunity, they all attacked Feng Yuro, wanting to create a breakthrough here. Both of them are supreme beings. The Dharma Supreme looked at the fierce battle below and said, although they are slightly inferior to the Moon Breeze couple at present, Bu Liuqing's fighting spirit is high while the Moon Breeze couple's spirit has been worn down. Especially Feng Yuro, she can no longer maintain her peak. Therefore, the two of them attacking Feng Yuro now is attacking the enemy's weakness. As long as Feng Yuro is injured, Yu Lingxue will definitely be distracted. By then we will have the absolute upper hand. Although that woman is not here now, she must be somewhere watching this battle. These three are the highest figures in the opposing camp. They will definitely not bear to give up. Therefore they will definitely come to her rescue. By then, haha, it will be slaying of the Tao. I really don't have any energy left. I'll have a good rest and continue writing tomorrow. My heart kept reminding me to continue the outburst so that I can stabilize myself. However, my body really can't take it anymore. Please everyone support our proud world. Let me take a breather. I beg for votes. G. To be continued. Chapter 11-13. Before the Dharma Supreme finished his words, Feng Yuro let out a muffled groan. Blood spurted out from her cherry lips as she staggered backward. Yu Lingshue's clothes were as white as snow. In a flash he came over and exchanged places with Feng Yuro. His long sword struck out violently. Clang clang clang, the continuous sword strikes were like a bolt of lightning, exploding with thunder. Two of the guardians who were attacking Feng Yuro staggered backward as blood flowed out from their 7 orifices. The other 7 people's bodies trembled violently as they spat out blood. Then they flew out like kites with their strings cut and split into pieces in midair. 7 second-grade supreme martial artists were killed by Yu Lingshue's sword. His divine soul had been destroyed. Yu Lingshue's heart ached for his wife's injury. He went all out and his might was simply unparalleled. However, a gap had finally been opened in the triangular formation of the three. Yu Lingxue and Bu Liuqing kept swapping positions and opponents with the injured Feng Yuro. However, the situation couldn't go back to how it was before. After all, no matter which side it was, the battle was equally intense and cruel. Bu Liuqing let out a long howl. His long sword was like a surging storm, rolling out and circling around Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. His long sword was like a shining dragon rolling around. In an instant all the enemies were forced to retreat. Around him there were more than a dozen corpses. Bu Liuqing flashed like a gust of wind and stuffed a purple crystal jade bottle into Yu Lingshue's hands. He shouted, "Give this to your wife. I'll hold it off, you protect her and treat her injuries." With a long laugh, the long sword in his hand surged as he turned around and attacked. He moved quickly and formed a circle of 50 feet around himself, protecting Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro within. A streak of white light connected into a line. Anyone who dared to enter this circle would be killed by him at the fastest speed. Yu Lingxue didn't dare to be negligent. He flew to Feng Yuro's side, pulled out the cork and said hurriedly, "Take it." Then he stuffed the medicine into his wife's mouth. Feng Yuro only felt that her internal organs were burning and she was feeling very uncomfortable. Instead, he felt a warm current flowing down his throat. His spirit shook as he asked, "What is this?" "No idea." Yu Lingxue stood with his sword in hand, focusing all his attention on protecting his wife. He looked at the surging sword waves all around him, the sharp whistling of sword energy filling the heavens and earth. Bu Liuqing, 1 man and 1 sword, blocked the siege of more than 100 supreme martial artists by himself. He actually advanced instead of retreating. Whenever the sword light came into contact with a supreme being, all of them spat out blood as they retreated. Their bodies were riddled with wounds, and those who were slightly closer were directly dismembered. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. I had always thought that Bu Liuqing's and Ning Tianye's cultivations weren't much different from each other. But it seems that the gap between us is very big. Feng Yuro only felt that ever since she took the elixir, her body had become much more relaxed. That warm current was like soft water flowing through her body. All of his wounds were healed. First, the pain in his dantian suddenly disappeared. Then, a warm current floated up from his dantian and entered his meridians. The pain in his meridians was also instantly healed. The wounds on his internal organs also disappeared without a trace, as if spring water had flowed through them. In just a breath's time, his body had actually recovered to its original state. Feng Yuro opened her eyes in disbelief and met Yu Lingshue's concerned eyes. She moved her lips and said, "I've recovered." "Done. So fast." Yu Lingxue cried out in surprise. Although he had long known that Bu Liuqing's gift was definitely not ordinary, he had never thought that it would have such a miraculous effect. Feng Yuro raised her sword and attacked. She moved closer to Yu Lingshua's ear and whispered, "Where did you get the heavy pill?" Yu Lingshua was shocked. He said, "Brother Bu gave it to me." Feng Yuro had already rushed to Bu Liuqing's side with her sword and attacked. Yu Lingshua had no time to be shocked. He flew up like a shooting star and occupied another position. With a swing of his sword he cut a supreme martial artist into two. The triangular formation was formed again. All of the incoming enemies retreated. The pressure on Bu Liuqing was greatly reduced by half. He felt relaxed and laughed. "Sister-in-law, you've recovered?" Feng Yuro smiled and said, "Thank you, Brother Bu, for giving me the elixir." Bu Liuqing smiled and said, "It's not from me but from Lady Z. If you want to thank someone, thank her." The three of them attacked at the same time. The three arrowheads of the triangular formation pierced outwards. Endless screams were heard. Almost 300 supreme martial artists surrounded them. At this moment, half of them had already died. Yi Di and the rest of the 8 super clans felt as if their hearts were being twisted by knives. These were all the elites of their clans. To die here just like that, if they could be exchanged for some price, it would be fine. But just as they exchanged for Feng Yuro's serious injuries, she actually recovered in the blink of an eye. How could this not make the 8-second grandmasters grit their teeth so hard? At the highest point, Wu Jueqing's white robes were as white as snow. He looked coldly at the battle below. He didn't make a move but was conserving his energy, waiting for Zi Shiqing to come so that he could fight decisively. The only thing he could do now was to continuously release the poisonous fog. Although everyone on his side had the antidote, everyone was well aware that before Bu Liuqing and the other two lost their powers, this poisonous fog wouldn't have any effect. The three of them had already communicated with the bridge of heaven and earth, and their cultivation was endless. How could it be depleted so easily? The Dharma Supreme was already nowhere to be seen. In another secret place, the Dharma Supreme sat cross-legged. Wisps of white fog with hints of purple were absorbed into his body as he breathed in and out. If experts like Bu Liuqing were here, they would be shocked to see that what the Dharma Supreme was absorbing was the power of life origin. Moreover, it was the life origin of these supreme martial artist experts after they died. So many supreme beings had already died. Of course, many of them had been completely killed. Their souls had been completely destroyed. Some of them had even disappeared along with their life source. However, there were still too many who had been killed directly. Their life source hadn't had time to disappear. It had turned into pure energy and floated between heaven and earth. This portion of energy couldn't be absorbed by humans. In the end, it could only dissipate between heaven and earth, and the last bit of real spirit would also be annihilated and enter the cycle of reincarnation. But the Dharma Supreme was actually able to absorb it now. And this way, this portion of supreme martial artists could be considered as having their spirits completely destroyed. The number of supreme martial artists besieging the three gradually decreased. Suddenly, a voice sounded in the ears of Yi Di and the rest. "Everyone, please make your move." It was the Dharma Supreme's voice. With a long howl, Xiao Se came out and was the first to make his move. The autumn wind rustles again, unsheathing the sword. The sky is colorless. Supreme martial artist Bu, Xiao Se is here to learn from you. Xiao Se unsheathed his sword, and the autumn wind rose and fell for thousands of miles, exuding a desolate and vast aura. Suddenly, it filled heaven and earth. The sword was like autumn water. Wrapped in the autumn wind and autumn clouds, the sword slashed horizontally at Bu Liuqing. "So Xiao Se. So it's already a supreme martial artist." Bu Liuqing's eyebrows twitched and the sword light shook. With a loud bang it met Xiao Se's sword. Xiao Se's body shook and he flipped in the air. Then, another wave of autumn water came quietly. His body retreated. But the sword light was advancing. "So Xiao Se." Bu Liuqing was energized, and his sword flew, facing Xiao Se and the other 5 supreme martial artists at the same time. Riding the wind, drifting to the 4 seas to disperse Qingqiu. "Supreme martial artist Yu, I'm here to learn from you." Qingqiu laughed. His body was as elegant as the clouds, and he went straight for Yu Lingxue. "The night sky is dark and gloomy. In the heavens there are emperors." Yi Di came quietly. As if the night sky was even more solemn. "Supreme martial artist Feng Yi Di is here to learn from you." With the addition of the 3 second grandmasters, the pressure on Bu Liuqing and the rest increased greatly. Yi Di and Xiao Se were both second-grade supreme martial artists, and they were conserving their energy. With this, they were almost on par with Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro after a long battle. Other than Xiao Se, who was suppressed by Bu Liuqing, the other 2 sides were already at a disadvantage. "Supreme martial artist Bu. Sorry to offend you." A gust of extremely cold air seemed to come from the snowy mountains. Ling Fengyun joined the battle and attacked Bu Luqing from both sides. Then Lan Muxue also joined the battle with his sword. A fierce wind came from behind. Supreme Martial Artist Bu Shijing is here too. 4 second Grandmasters, 3 8th grade peak level. 1 second grade Supreme Martial Artist, together with more than 10 upper grade Supreme Martial Artists, besieged Bu Luqing. Bu Luqing only felt the pressure getting heavier and heavier. He laughed loudly. Great, great. Wu Jueqing, it's so easy, why don't you come and snatch it? This is your upbringing, haha. Wu Jueqing snorted. Bu Luqing, you can talk after you've dealt with them. Then Qin Mingqi flew out and attacked Yu Lingxue together with Qing Chou. The Dharma Supreme's 2 guardians joined the battle again, besieging Feng Yuro. Instantly, the battle turned into a miserable one. Among the 8 second Grandmasters, only Zhuge Hutu had not joined the battle. He had to preside over the array and could not join the battle. However, even so, the pressure on Bu Luqing and the other 2 had increased by more than 3 times at the same time. Bu Luqing could still handle it, but Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were already struggling. They were at a disadvantage in the overall battle. Hey! With a muffled groan, blood flowed from the corner of Yu Lingxue's mouth. Opposite him, Qing Chou retreated while vomiting blood. She had exchanged injuries for injuries. She had exchanged her injuries for Yu Lingxue's injuries. Yu Lingxue drew his sword and shouted, Dharma Supreme! Aren't you coming? Qin Mingqi took advantage of the situation and rushed forward. More than 10 Supreme Martial Artists attacked at the same time. We don't need the Dharma Supreme to deal with you. At the same time, Feng Yuro staggered backward, but her shoulder was hit by Yi Di's palm. The triangular battle formation collapsed. Yi Di and the rest did not show mercy, and their attacks became fiercer and fiercer. The 2 guardians' faces darkened and every move was fatal. In the chaotic land, Yi Di rose into the air and shouted, Dripping Blood Battle Technique. With a wild shout, the situation changed instantly. A Supreme Martial Artist of the Yi clan shouted and rushed toward Yu Lingxue with his sword. Yu Lingxue snorted and stabbed his sword. That person did not dodge and the sword went deep into his heart. However, that person actually reached out and wrapped his arm around the sword like a rope, but his body continued to rush toward Yu Lingxue fiercely. Around him, there were people with arms wide open, desperately hugging him. Yu Lingxue was furious and kicked out. Another person met his kick with his chest. At the same time, blood spurted out, but he hugged Yu Lingxue's leg tightly. Yu Lingxue's sword shook violently, and he exerted strength in his leg. With a boom, the person on the sword was torn into pieces, and the person under his leg was also turned into a pile of flesh and blood. However, at this moment, his back, shoulders and thighs were all attacked at the same time. The dripping blood battle technique was to trade one's life for another. Even if you don't want my life, you will let others take yours. My monthly votes have been exceeded, please give me monthly votes. Gee, by the way, my birthday is on the 2nd day of the month. The 10th day has long passed. According to the village rules, we only celebrate the lunar calendar and not the solar calendar, ha. Therefore, please don't give me any more birthday red packets. If you do, you will really feel guilty. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.